From Studio 401, it's the Stranger Than Fiction News right here on The Fringe FM. I'm Vance Nesbitt, and here's our headlines. A devastating tornado leaves a house untouched. Remarkable drone footage recorded in Georgia shows one unscathed house surrounded by total devastation. Matt Gillespie had been visiting his parents on March 4th when he decided to use a drone to record the aftermath of a tornado that had hit the towns of Illiers and Waverly Hall. The extreme wind had left a trail of destruction throughout the area, with trees uprooted and houses destroyed and debris left strewn across the ground. But perhaps the most surprising thing of all, however, was a single house that had somehow managed to remain untouched despite all the trees surrounding it being felled by the tornado. You can see the eerie photo and the rest of the story at unexplainedmysteries.com. And the Pentagon wants to test a space-based weapon by the year 2023. Defense officials have asked for $304 million to fund research into space-based lasers, particle beams, and other new forms of missile defense next year. Defense officials want to test a neutral particle beam in orbit in the fiscal year of 2023 as part of a ramped-up effort to explore various types of space-based weaponry. You can read all the article at defenseone.com. And a new eyewitness submission of a possible Dogman picture. The person is quoted as saying, "I wanted to send a picture from a family member who was lured out of a vehicle and then attacked and scratched up by a hairy bear-like dog creature. He felt like he was being watched, snapped a few photos, and then something hit his car and rolled across the hood. He thought he hit someone, got out and seen this thing, and then it attacked him, and he fought with it." He is also quoted as saying, "A similar creature to what me and my wife seen a few years back. It turned from human to a wolf creature and then went into the fog with lightning and was gone." You can see the photographs and read the rest of the article at cryptozoologynews.com. And more cryptid reports out of Pennsylvania in 2018 by researcher Stan Gordon. In January, residents of the Chestnut Ridge area reported more sightings of huge dark birds with massive wingspans. And in February, a series of clawed tracks were seen in the snow in Armstrong County. Also in February, a motorist driving near the Pennsylvania-West Virginia border observed an odd creamsicle-colored creature lumbering across the road. There is talk around the area that there is an 8-foot-tall creature that has been seen around the Delmont area. There have been other reports of tall creature beings reported from Allegheny and Westmoreland counties. There has also been possible Bigfoot activity reported in some areas, including Westmoreland County, where researchers are currently looking into recent reports of screams and howls and possible Bigfoot observation. You can read this and other reports at stangordon.info. And let's wrap things up with the Stranger Than Fiction fun fact. 1 in every 5 adults believe that aliens are hiding on our planet disguised as humans. Thanks for listening to the Stranger Than Fiction News right here on the Fringe FM. Again, I'm Vance Nesbitt, news anchor and sorcerer.
Message is being broadcast by the Department of Defense of the Republic. At 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, multiple unidentified objects were confirmed to have entered Earth's atmosphere.
Discovery Houston, 20 seconds to LOS speed rescue.
Contact, in orbit. The first message that comes to you is you are a divine being. You matter. You count. You come from realms of unimaginable power and light, and you will return to those realms.
The vast stretches of the unknown and the unanswered and the unfinished still far outstrip our collective comprehension.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Broadcasting from Forest Tower Studios, all the way from the Deep South. Now, here is your host, Joe Root.
Good evening. I'm Joe Roop, and this is Lighting the Void. It is Tuesday night, March the 19th, on into the 20th, and the moon is waxing almost full on into midnight. Less than 1 day until the equinox. Thank you all for joining us tonight. This evening, Dr. Heather Lynn is going to be joining us to discuss her new book that's launching on April 1st, Evil Archaeology, Demon Possessions, and Sinister Relics. A very interesting look into our history, even our occulted history a little bit, so I can't wait to get into this. If you're listening to us, make sure that you check out wherever you're listening from, whether if you're listening on the network, which is KTOK Digital Broadcasting, the Fringe FM, or check out our website at lightingthevoid.com. At any point in time, if you want to call in to ask a question tonight, you can. It's toll free, 1-800-588-0335. Give us a like, follow, everything you can. Just Google Lighting the Void and give us a follow and leave a review. Go check out our new events page, too. We got some events that we're trying to do. So some of us want to go to Egypt, or some of us want to go to the Yucatan. The spots are limited. I know it's pretty pricey, but it's worth it. And if you guys got any ideas how we can raise money to do this as well, I'm working with NEXT on this so we can all go actually experience this together. So yeah, we got that, and also the Beyond the Matrix event that's happening right now. So if you didn't notice, John Polk did not get to do a show. And I don't think Suzanne will be doing her show tomorrow night either, because they're at the Beyond the Matrix event in Sedona, which is a 2-day event starting now. So if you can't get out there, you can always just sign up. You can stream it, actually, too. So you can go to sci-spy.tv/events and stream that if you want. It's going to be totally worth it. Some Marine St. Germain's going to be out there. There's quite a few awesome speakers, actually. So go check that out, sci-spy.tv/events. And then on Wednesday morning at the event, if you get a VIP pass, you'll be able to do the Rising Sun of the Equinox at the Grand Portal of Bell Rock, with Sarah and Michael White. They're going to guide you in a group intention to spread love. So if you're like me and you're stuck at the house and you can't make it out to Sedona, you can stream it. Go check it out, sci-spy.tv/events. All right, let's see, what else do we got to cover before we get into this? Yeah, Get the Tea is doing our webinars every 2 weeks. Go to getthetea.com, sign up for the webinar. If you do that, you'll get to hang out with me and Ronnie, and we're going to be giving away a coupon, a once-in-a-lifetime coupon for only the people that sign up to the webinar. So do that. And also download the Surfer Music app for sure. You'll thank me for it later. Some social shout-outs: Kane Parr, Brett Lewis, Melissa Bradshaw, Elaine Knight Goodell, Ron Blevins, Charles Gilbert, Willow Caper, Jennifer Reeves, Christian Bewley, Carrie Coleman, Aaron Park, Adrian Fly, Farine, Orion Van Zant, Kristen Capucci, and Sean Morris. Big shout-out to Barney Sissel, and a big, warm love hug shout-out to Genevieve. And if you want to get your shout-outs, all you got to do is give us a follow on social media, and we'll give you a shout-out, because I believe in reciprocity. I hope I said that right. Another cool thing real quick that I have to mention, you guys know that if you listen to the show, if you know me, and I'm pretty sure you guys are the same way, that you love everything much more when it's bathed in moonlight and starlight. So, you're all sky watchers, right? The supermoon, the super worm equinox moon, the last supermoon of 2019, is going to be a major sky watching event. It coincides with the equinox, which also heralds the start of the new season. But it is the last supermoon of 2019. It will be visible in the night sky tomorrow night. The moon will reach its closest point to Earth, what's known as a lunar perigee, on Tuesday, which is today at 3:47 p.m., although it won't be completely full until tomorrow night at 9:43 p.m. Eastern Time. So the March full moon is also known as the worm moon because it coincides with the time of the year when the earthworms begin to emerge from the thawing soils. And that's why they call it this, or that's why this equinox supermoon is also being called a super worm moon. So yeah, pretty cool stuff. We'll probably be watching that tonight together, hopefully. If you want to chat at any point in time, you can do that as well. You can go, we're over on Spreaker. The stream is live over there too, under Lighting the Void and the fringe.fm/chat. You can text into the show as well at 501-777-5631. So tonight's topic, really want to dig into what role did the Sumerians play? What role did Sumerian demons play in the development of our civilization, actually? And are curses a real thing, which is a topic that we've discussed on the show a few times. Can material objects contain evil or negative energy? Or what about even places? And what things, what can we do to protect ourselves according to historical records? Now, do you want to know this stuff? I think you do, because at the very least, I want to know what some of the intentions in these relics were. I'd like to know. And a few of the topics we've covered on the show about animism, energy, and consecration and protection leads me to believe that this stuff goes way back. And our studies in the occult and magic here have shown that. Now, I'm not an expert in archaeology. It's not my specialty at all, though, but I am completely fascinated with it. So that's why we're going to welcome Dr. Heather Lynn. Now, Dr. Heather Lynn is an author, historian, and renegade archaeologist on a quest to uncover the truth behind ancient mysteries. She holds numerous degrees and certificates in both history and archaeology, and is a member of professional organizations, including the American Historical Association, the Society for Historical Archaeology, or the SHA, the Association of Ancient Historians, and the World Archaeological Congress. She left a life in academia to pursue her fascination with the unexplained, and now investigates ancient mysteries, lost civilizations, hidden history, ancient aliens, and the occult. Heather's work exposes our hidden history, challenging the accepted narrative found in mainstream history books, and she has been a historical consultant for television programs, including History's Ancient Aliens, and you can check out our website at drheatherlynn.com. Dr. Heather Lynn, thank you so much for coming on Lighting the Void. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
So, let's dig right into this. This stuff is, I actually got some messages before the show. They're like, oh, I don't want to talk about this. This is evil stuff. I'll come around when all the rainbows are talked about and stuff. But, I mean, when you look into our history, there's some, not everything is all rainbows and butterflies, right?
Right. And yes, this can be a scary topic. And I have actually received some of those messages myself about the book cover. Apparently some people thought the book cover was quite scary, and maybe they're a little superstitious about even having a copy, but I hope that doesn't stop anyone from ordering it. It is a little scary. I will give everybody that warning. There are some moments that are a little gory, but educationally so. It's not excessive. It's important to, the overall context of what I discuss. And there are a lot of things in it too that sort of, I think would ease somebody's mind about those frightening things or potentially frightening subjects. Not to say that I debunk, but there are some ways to, re-examine the idea of these demons, and they come out to be maybe not so scary. Maybe so. I'll just have to leave that up to the reader, but I would suggest that don't be afraid. We have to face those things, as you said. Sometimes it's not all rainbows, and the past isn't filled with unicorns and butterflies.
Yeah. And when we look into the subject of like ancient aliens and Sumeria, everybody always likes to take it back to that, Egypt and Sumeria. Then they get into the Zachariah Stitchin stuff. But The reason why I'm fascinated with archaeology and I like things like this is because I think it tells a story that most people don't get when they're just chasing a subject, and reveals a lot of things. For instance, where, like, the history of demons, where did the idea of demons come from? You know, and I don't know if you're familiar with that at all, but I've found some pretty interesting stuff on that. Are demons actually evil? I mean, I've heard people call them daemons and stuff too. Maybe you can, extend on that.
Well, yeah, actually, that's something that I do look at in the book. I take it more in like a linear fashion. So I start from the earliest accounts of demons that we know of. And some of them are sort of presumed accounts. So things in prehistory, there's evidence to suggest that there are prehistoric beliefs in demons. And so it goes as far back as, say, at least 60,000 years. And by evidence, I'm suggesting what's called trepanning. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's drilling a permanent hole in the skull. It's the oldest known surgical procedure. It dates back to the late Paleolithic era. Trepanning is found in just about every part of the world. And so it's a really just universal sort of phenomenon. It's quite interesting and quite strange. But the research has shown that there's many reasons they did it. Sort of maybe epilepsy is a common idea, that they were doing it to sort of cure these sort of psychological disorders or illnesses, to lessen the intracranial pressure after an injury, and the brain is another reason. But there are also reasons to believe that they did this to allow demons or spirits to be able to escape their head. And so as a result, it's sort of looked at as one of the oldest pieces of evidence to suggest that perhaps Paleolithic man believed in some sort of spirit that could get into the head and run amok, if you will. But a more recognizable depiction of, say, an exorcism is really found as far back as 4,000 years ago in the Sumerian cuneiform tablets. Archaeologists have found many Mesopotamian medical texts outlining exorcism rites that appear very similar to those of the Catholic Church, or the ones that we may be familiar with today in popular culture. Of roughly 1,000 cuneiform tablets that the British Museum has, 660 of them specifically reference exorcism. So it is quite old. And so it's also old and very specific. As I said, it sort of references ideas that we would think of in popular culture, like the idea that you would lay out the possessed person on a bed and have the priest come in and do some incantations, and then also demand to know the name of a demon. And so it's very, very reminiscent of today's sort of idea of what we consider exorcism. So it is very ancient.
I'm curious, why do you call yourself a renegade archaeologist? Because to me, you've got the background. And just hearing like renegade archaeologist is cool to me, because it reminds me of people that kind of went against the grain, like John Anthony West and things like that. Why do you call yourself a renegade archaeologist? Just curious.
Oh, it is because I go against the grain. Absolutely. I do have the background. I sort of, I didn't come from sort of like a background that you would think, I don't want to say I didn't have it easy. Let's just say I didn't get just tossed into college and told, hey, go on and acquire these degrees. Instead, I had a somewhat unconventional route here. So I ended up leaving home when I was 16 years old, and I traveled the country, as sort of like a rebel without a cause, I guess you would say.
Right on.
I had no interest in history when I was in grade school. I actually wanted to study music. I play French horn and classical music and some different instruments. But I didn't really have an interest in history, and I attribute that to how they teach history in school. It's really about just names and dates and rote memorization, and it wasn't something that I found very interesting. So, I said, forget this. But I left school, and I ended up coming back. But while I was out in the world, sort of, running amok, what I did was I I traveled all across the country. Part of that involved late night radio shows. I would stop at various truck stops and meet different people at diners, and I would take time to hear their stories and their accounts of things they saw on the road. A lot of times they involved alien encounters and, Bigfoot stories and things I hadn't really experienced myself, but was fascinated with. And so hearing those stories and just those people's experiences got me really interested in like alternative ideas and those things. So, but still I was, on my own adventures doing my own thing, but it became an interest of mine on the side. But then when I went back to school, I started in community college and I studied archaeology. I studied art history. And I just
after talking to everybody, you knew what you wanted to get into, right?
I did, but I still didn't really go right in for it. I did the dutiful thing. And as you could imagine, when you drop out of school as a teenager and run around the country and don't really get your act together, you don't have many good job opportunities awaiting you when you get your act together. So I went back to school with the intention of just doing what I needed to do to, have a good job. And so I initially thought, well, I'll major in something, and I just went in there. But as a prerequisite, I had to take, some art classes, and I took art. I'm no illustrator or painter, so I took art history, which was more along the lines of my interest. And while there, I was captivated. And the teacher, thankfully, I had a very good professor. She was really something. She said on one of the first days, this textbook you have here, half of it is lies. The other, half is just meh. So take it or leave it. And at this point I had paid almost $800 for this textbook. And it was back before you could rent them easily and, all this stuff. So I had paid a lot of money for this textbook thinking it was just the keys to it all.
You're already getting pushback from the academia right off the bat. Yeah.
She told me, she was like, oh, it's just, but she opened my eyes to that. She sort of just said, let's take a look at some of this, history and just look at it in a different way than just what the book says. And so she was an amazing professor and she actually encouraged me because I would really like to write papers and this sort of thing. So I got the bug for it then. And then I thought, well, I think I'll take more of these classes. And then I just realized that I'm going to follow my dreams and just do what I wanted to do. Because I had played with the idea as a child, of course, of being an archaeologist and doing all these fantastic things. But I never thought it could be something.
I mean, right. After the first time you watch Indiana Jones, everybody's like, that's what I want to do. I want to be Indiana Jones.
Exactly.
I want to be that guy, right?
Oh, right. Yeah.
They don't talk about the schooling much, though, and how much work it takes to get there, though, I don't think.
They don't. And so I sort of just went in that direction and said, I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And I started taking these classes. And then eventually, of course, I got the bachelor's degree and master's, et cetera, and just worked my way through it. And, so I have a legitimate sort of, career path going. But then, of course, I've always carried this interest in the fringe and alternative ideas. And I like to tell the story of when I was in my first archaeology class. I was given a syllabus at the beginning of the course when it tells you everything you need to know. And the professor had a list of names on the board and in the syllabus of what he called pseudo-archaeologists. And it was our job, our first assignment, to debunk these pseudo-archaeologists. And what struck me as interesting was that I recognized those names. I had been reading some of their material, and I was familiar with these people already. These are people like Michael Cremo and Graham Hancock and some other authors.
So they wanted you to debunk them as part of the course?
Exactly. And what I thought was also interesting was this was like Archaeology 101. We hadn't learned anything about research methodology, or, we weren't really given the proper tools to be able to debunk them with any level of certainty or accuracy. So that wasn't the point. And he went on to say, well, the point of this exercise is not necessarily honing your debate skills as much as it is realizing that part of what we need to do as a profession is stick together so that we have the credibility on our side, so that we can discredit others, so that we can make sure that we are the experts and we're seen as the experts. And I thought, well, that's quite something, isn't it? So, and again, these were authors that I had read and heard on late night radio, and I respected, and not all of them I necessarily agreed with, but I just found that it was a little bit interesting that, yes, on the first day it was attack mode. And so, but that still didn't turn me off. And it wasn't until I started working in the archaeology lab that, those things started, the experiences I had there sort of started getting me a little jaded. Nothing major, but I went into it feeling very optimistic. And what I found was a lot of it was based in just rigging a system in order to, get grant money to keep people funded and keep people working, but not necessarily keep anybody researching. And then it became my job to write the grants and do these things. And I just didn't like the sort of apathetic attitude and some of the other things. But I mean, it was just one thing after another. And I got a little disenchanted. And so when I was young, I emailed Michael Cremo and I asked him what to do. I did not think he would write me back, but he did. And he gave me some great advice, and it was very practical and useful advice. And he said, well, you can either stay in school and, go the traditional path, and you'll be able to push the envelope, little by little and make a difference in the system that way. Or you can leave completely and basically explore whatever and do what you want to do. But, I will lose an element of credibility. And so I thought, well, that's, that clearly makes sense. And he basically talked me off a ledge, I think. And in his own, articulate way, he said, be cool, stay in school. And so I did. And I looked at it as an opportunity to sort of be a double agent. So what I did was I carried as much of the knowledge that I could get along with me so that when I would apply this sort of traditional methodology of inquiry and research, I would apply it to alternative archaeology or fringe topics or some of the topics that you mentioned at the top of the show here. Right. And so that's sort of what I do, and that's why, as opposed to accepting a position then further in, the university system, or what I like to refer to as the academic industrial complex.
That totally explains it. I mean, that explains Renegade 100%. And, it's funny, after talking to John Anthony West and Robert Schock, I did get a lot of feeling about, you hear them talk about it, about academia. I think John Anthony West calls them the quackademics, but you get,
yes.
you start to get this vibe, but you don't get too many stories about how that happens. So it's kind of fascinating to hear that as, your experience with school and stuff. But what I want to get into actually is the evidence of certain things, because we're all fascinated with our history when it comes to, things like Sumeria, ancient aliens, Stitchins, or just even alternative history. And the only evidence that we can really get, other than, I guess, spiritual experiences or our beliefs, is through archaeology, right? And so what I wanted to do was get into the idea of demons, where they came from. Are they actually here dwelling amongst us? Not get into the semantics of people's beliefs, because that can get a bit touchy sometimes, but just, look at what your research has found, and we'll get into this topic. But that is pretty fascinating history there. And did you get any more pushback after that one time?
Oh, well, no, and it wasn't too severe. I actually had a pretty, mild experience of it. I think what really gave me the pushback and what really sort of woke me up to all of it was my later experience when I was writing my report, The Sumerian Controversy. That was a whole different ballgame altogether. That was when I uncovered how deep the corruption actually went at some of the bigger universities, in such that they had some of their excavations funded by big oil companies, wealthy elite banking families, antique collectors, and people like this who would funnel the money into the universities, sort of launder it, and then, basically have the university system beholden to them so that they would have first dibs on whatever artifacts they would find. And they were doing this particularly in the areas of, Mesopotamia.
I told you guys, I told everybody that was happening. My cousin from the military told me about how they would hand out playing cards back when they would have to like memorize the faces of terrorists and stuff. And then once they kind of went into that, then they handed out cards with certain symbols and artifacts to them to memorize that. So if they found it, they could report it to their CO.
Absolutely. That's absolutely true.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's 100% true.
We'll get into this stuff. Demons from the ancient world, are they actually, I mean, what does this imply? That's what I want to get into. What does the archaeology imply? And we're here with Dr. Heather Lynn. We'll be right back, guys. Don't go anywhere. More Lighting the Void coming up.
Lighting the Void Radio.
The truth is out there.
There's something out here.
And so are we. KTLK Digital Broadcasting, The Fringe FM.
Okay, nurse, let's get this man to the ER stat.
Right away, doctor.
We see this every day. Heart attack or angina pain due to blocked and clogged arteries. Chelation can remove obstructions or blockages from arteries and help avoid painful and expensive surgery. Now there's Angioprim. It's a liquid oral chelation product that you take with juice. You start to feel the results fast. Angioprim increases blood flow all over the body, and that means more energy and strength to take on the day with less aches and pains. 60 years of research has gone into chelation, and Angioprim is the result. A safe and easy way to unblock your veins and arteries from buildup that slow circulation.
Paging Dr. Jones. Please report to the emergency room right away.
Log on now for a special radio offer from Angioprim. That's angioprim.com/radio. ANGIOPRIM. Angioprim.com/radio or call 877-882-7221. That's 877-882-7221.
Hi, this is Aaron Hunter, host of Real Paranormal Activity, the podcast where we tell real paranormal experiences of people from around the world. And we also conduct interviews with authors, investigators, psychics, and mediums. Real people, real stories, real fear. Thursdays at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern on The Fringe FM. See you then.
When I'm done running with the wolves after hunting down a half-ton bison, I look forward to a mind-teetering escapade evening on The Fringe FM.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
This is Cortana from Shift Happens, telling you to pour a glass and park your ass because you're listening to KTLK, The Fringe FM. Shifthead.
Folks, this is very important information. What's to be said about CBD? AncientLifeOil.com. Our CBD is made from hemp and has 0.003 THC, which means this wonderful product won't get you high, no matter what amount you take. What does CBD do for the body? My hands are tied. But you can Google CBD benefits and be astounded. When you're finished reading, you'll want to log on to AncientLifeOil.com. That's AncientLifeOil.com and purchase. Life is good when you feel good. People are tired of pain. People are asking for non-GMO organic products to help them with you fill in the blank. Legal in 49 states, and again, our CBD is made from hemp. Ancient Life Oil is about helping people one by one by one. If you wonder how good the product is, the CEO takes it every day without miss. AncientLifeOil.com. That's AncientLifeOil.com. Have a great day.
Howdy, this is Catalina, and you're listening to Lighting the Void with Joe Roop.
All right, welcome back to Lighting the Void. I just want you guys to know that we are almost done working on the membership side of this site, and what it's going to be is commercial-free archives, extra content, my dream journal, a few audiobooks and stuff, things like that. So it's going to be the entirety of the archives, 100% commercial-free, plus extra content, lots of good extra content. It's only going to be $3 a month, so we're getting that. It's just taking a while because we have to upload all of the back episodes, edit out all the commercials. So I know some of you are asking about that, but yeah, that is coming up soon. But just to let you guys know, tonight we're here with Dr. Heather Lynn. We're discussing ancient relics, also Evil Archaeology. That's a cool, catchy title, but I really believe that there is evil archaeology out there. I want to get into this though, real quick. Dr. Lynn, the idea of demons, right? So we've discussed, are demons real, et cetera, et cetera. We've had magicians on the show that talked about summoning demons, and others that say they're parts of ourselves, and others that say they're not, that they're just a belief structure. But what I really want to know, while we have you here with us, is what does the archaeology imply? Is it something that has really spawned the ideas of everything in our religion? Do you think, based on the archaeology, that they might be real, that they might actually be among us?
Well, that's pretty much the whole thesis of this book is trying to get to that answer. I actually start with more of a semantic idea of it, or a question of it. The book was inspired, strangely enough, by the movie The Exorcist and the book The Exorcist. If anybody remembers that movie, the demon Pazuzu was the demon that was responsible for possessing Regan, and that is the demon that's featured on the cover of the book. Pazuzu was the demon of the southwestern wind and bearer of storms and drought in Mesopotamian mythology. And so, the opening scenes of that movie and book start with an archaeologist doing these excavations. It's the priest. And it's just something that when I watched it years later, I thought, that's interesting. And it just sort of, stuck out at me, and it had me, interested. I suppose I had always liked that movie, but, never related to it in such a way. But then later, after, it was almost serendipitous. It was not too much longer after watching that movie again after so many years, I came across a news story that made me wonder if maybe demons, even ancient Mesopotamian demons, could still be dwelling among us, maybe even possessing us. It was a news story out of Forsyth County in North Carolina. So in 2014, there were sheriff deputies that searched a suburban home and found the remains of two men who had been missing since 2009. And according to the autopsy reports, one man was shot in, I believe it was the back of the head, and another was shot 7 times, including 3 times in the head. And so this is a really heinous crime. I just kept reading on, and I found that the killer's name was actually Pazuzu. Oh, and wow. So the record skipped, and I looked and I was like, wait a minute now. And so I found out that before legally changing it, Pazuzu's name was John Lawson. He grew up in a suburb of Clemens. He struggled with his mental health for a while, as I guess you could imagine. But he would go on then later and recruit a brotherhood of other disenfranchised and probably mentally unstable people to help him torture, murder, and then cannibalize local strangers and neighbors and bury them in the backyard of his home. So according to a psychiatric report on him, he had practiced a Sumerian religion that involved a monthly blood sacrifice, usually of a small animal, at least at first. He performed the ritual during what he called the Black Moon in order to, in his mind, appease the Sumerian demons and specifically honor Pazuzu. And so I just thought, this is really something, and what weird timing as well. Something's up. And so, pictures, I saw some pictures and video that was taken inside of his home, and it was a very disturbing scene. There were just Sumerian markings and occult symbols all over the walls, and ceilings were just plastered with all of this, cut out pictures of Sumerian demons and what's called the Anunnaki just pinned all over the place. The filthy kitchen that he had used to butcher the victims' bodies. And I mean, it was awful. Stripes of just fly tape were covered with dead flies hanging from the wall, like I say, hellish party streamers. It was really bad. And so I thought, wow, this is really something. He ended up actually getting somehow killed in prison. They don't know exactly how, but it was about 3 a.m. and the guards found him in a pool of his own blood. The autopsy report showed that he had cut his left arm, like on the inside of his elbow, as though he was trying to cut off his arm. So the report only said that he had perforated his left brachial artery, but that he had he had deep scratches just all over his chest, arm, and scalp, and he also had rib fractures. But still, the autopsy couldn't really determine how he died, other than just this, brutal beating or scratching or whatever.
Sounds like a possession to me. I'm just saying it.
I'm just saying, right.
Yeah.
Well, the report said it was suicide. But see, what was interesting was before that, he had begged the psychiatrist to let him perform his so-called Black Moon ritual to Pazuzu because he feared he would anger the demon if he couldn't appease him. Even his own mother warned the police that she feared that if her son wasn't able to do this ritual, that he would likely kill himself. So, of course, they said, no, we're not giving you small animals to kill in prison. But then, here he goes, and that evening he dies in such a gruesome, strange way. And so, just the story stuck with me, and it was really quite telling. And so, obviously, he was 100% to blame for his terrible murders and killing spree. But I started thinking of who or what he said inspired him, which was Pazuzu. So it had me thinking about the word inspiration and the etymology of that. And so the Latin origin of the word inspiration is inspirare, meaning to breathe or blow into. And that was originally a term used to describe when a supernatural being would impart an idea onto somebody. And so I thought, what is possession then but a evil spiritual entity inhabiting a willing person and maybe encouraging them to do evil things in the name of that demon? And so I thought, even though demons aren't tangibly real or to some even arguably real, this criminal case left me questioning the criteria for demonic possession, especially in our modern world. So were these criminals just suffering from psychological problems? Were they themselves evil? Or did Pazuzu, the spirit of Pazuzu, sort of, inspire them to do these things? And could that alone make demonic possession real? So, if you ask the parents of the victims, they would say certainly this had very real consequences, the belief at least, and, the possession had these real consequences. So isn't that enough to be real? Right. And so that's sort of where I start thinking about, well, what does it mean, to be possessed or to have these experiences? And so I do look through the archaeological record to see if there's any evidence to suggest that these things could be true. And I examine multiple artifacts and places and situations. And then eventually I look at some interesting science that's being done on demonic possessions. And so, I actually found some researchers at a university who are trying to sort of look for evidence of possession in like a medical way. So
yeah, I was wondering how they would medically define demonic possession, though, because usually they just pan it off on some type of psychosis or something.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so in our current state in the West, in our modern era, that's a lot of the time what we would do is we would just, have somebody see a psychiatrist. Although there are psychologists and psychiatrists who are starting to implement exorcism as a part of their treatment. They believe that it can work, whether that's because of the placebo effect or what, that it's, who knows, but there are some people who believe that it can work. Other than that, it's sort of a soft science in that it is something to be researched in just psychology or anthropology or something to that effect. Except when it comes to scientists in Morocco, who maybe their culture is allowing them to sort of explore fringe ideas more in a legitimate scientific research sort of way. So to them, they're coming at it from a Muslim point of view, and so they look at these as what they call jinn. And so what they're doing is they've actually been studying the science behind jinn possession since the 90s. And their theory is that certain diseases sort of have certain symptoms that come along with it. And then these diseases, in a way, are demonic spirits that have come into the body. It's sort of like a germ theory of demonology. And so they use like a molecular scientific explanation for demons. And they've been doing this research, for decades now. And
I think I saw a couple of articles on that where people were, or archaeologists were getting sick after going through Egyptian tombs and stuff. Is that what you're talking about? Kind of?
No.
Is that different?
This is different. The scientists are actually believing in the evil spirits.
Okay.
And that the evil spirits themselves are just so tiny that they cannot be seen. So they think that the evil spirits are invisible to the naked eye, like microbes, and that they somehow are independent of this, though. It's this whole conceptual framework that they've built to sort of legitimize their spiritual beliefs, or at least, it would seem that way. But they theorize that the molecular composition of actual evil spirits are what make the evil spirits afraid of light, which would explain in their minds why demons appear at night or in the dark. They even have their own special physical laws and life cycles and can rapidly multiply after entering the bloodstream, according to these scientists. Wow. So they even devised mathematic formulas to calculate the movement and behavior of the demons. And so they're looking at it in a very sort of scientific way, about this thing, not necessarily debunking it, but just looking at it, I guess, in a way that they're trying to prove the existence of these demons, or at least look for cures. It's really not too much different than how the Sumerians looked at the demons. The Sumerians looked at demons medically as well. They didn't look at it just as spirit. They didn't have the body-mind disconnect that we have now, which is why there's so many exorcism accounts and instruction manuals, because they were part of medical texts that they would teach to their doctors in the scribal medical schools. And so it has a basis in actual science in Mesopotamia. And so part of the reason, say, for instance, that they would demand to know the name of the demon was because what they were looking for was a diagnosis that would be medical. So if somebody had a series of symptoms, they would go in, assess the patient, and try to figure out the name of the demon or the diagnosis so that they would best know how to rid the person of the demon or / the disease. And so it's like they anthropomorphized medical disorders in a way. So something that we would call cancer, they might call Pazuzu, if that makes sense. But demons in the ancient world were also not necessarily all bad. In the case of Pazuzu, one of the reasons we find so many statues still and artifacts of Pazuzu is because he was a very popular statue and amulet and figure that people wanted to carry with them, particularly women who were pregnant or new mothers, because his role was to protect the female from losing their child to his evil, jealous, barren wife, Lamashtu, who was the demon responsible for miscarriages and sudden infant death. And so to ward off that evil spirit, you would get Pazuzu amulets, because since Pazuzu was the wife, or the husband rather, he could, beat his wife into submission. And so you see these depictions often in these, Sumerian artifacts. Like there's a hell plaque that sort of lays this whole scene out. It's in the Louvre right now in Paris. I feature that in the book as well. But it's just this idea that demons, at first, they weren't necessarily bad or all good. They were they were in between and sometimes could be used in order to, fulfill the wishes or goals.
Yeah, it's in a lot of
people,
grimoires and manuscripts too. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so what you were speaking of before was the sort of the idea of the curse of the pharaohs, which I discussed as well. And yes, they did find that, after all these different people had, died after particularly excavating King Tut's tomb, there is reason to think that it was due to some of the different bacteria and things that were on the tomb's walls. They are known to have deadly bacteria, and if somebody who enters that tomb, if they already have a compromised immune system, which we know that the Lord Carnarvon, the gentleman responsible for excavating this and discovering King Tut's tomb, he did have a compromised immune system and then later died. So it sort of seems to make sense. But also Egyptian tombs can contain gases left over from the embalming process. So really nasty things like hydrogen sulfide, ammonia gas, and even formaldehyde that can cause severe respiratory distress and sometimes death. And so, it definitely there could be a pharaoh's curse in that sense. But then also it's a little interesting to note that of all the deaths that occurred after that excavation, there was only a few that actually made contact with anything from the tomb. So while there is a scientific rational explanation for it, there are some weird outliers connected to that still lead people to wonder if there is such a thing as the pharaoh's curse.
Yeah, and in a sense, like if you study any, magic or occultism, they always say that things will seem to be explained, like either scientifically or about the laws of nature. But it always does seem to be a big coincidence too. And that's one of the, I guess you could say, parallels of this stuff, right? So maybe they did protect their graves. Maybe they didn't, but we know they did. And so this stuff happens to people scientifically through bacteria or whatever. I just find it all fascinating how the coincidence works, if that makes any sense. It's kind of like you were talking about microbes and molecules and bacteria and stuff. Well, if you read anything about protection and warding your house or consecrating your house or anything, they always say, well, the evil spirits, they live in dirty places, so make sure you really clean your house. And when you do the sage or whatever, that you really get every little corner. And it just kind of makes sense, but you really can't put it together, I guess, scientifically. But the coincidence makes sense.
And it's strange too, because I interviewed an exorcist for this book, and he kind of laid out some of those things that you mentioned about how you could protect yourself and keeping your environment clean and so on, which makes sense, I guess, in some sort of way. At least you would think it makes sense. But then again, I also discussed this idea of witch bottles, which is sort of the opposite of this idea. Witch bottles would be very nasty things. So they were bottles that would be filled with urine, nail clippings, just anything disgusting that you could imagine to put in a bottle. Yeah, and those were hidden in the foundations of homes, or maybe underneath the homes, somewhere underneath steps or in the wall. So these things have been found in England and in New England, and so there are still homes to this day in New England that when they dig around, to maybe do some home renovation, they find one of these bottles, and Lord help whoever opens it, because that's some maybe 100-year-old urine that they're going to open up, and it's really awful. But they believe that this sort of thing would protect you against witches. So it was really nasty. They found one recently when trying to build. I think they were building a car park or a parking lot for cars in the UK, and they found a really good specimen of this. It was very, very old, and so you find some of these things, and you also find things with those sometimes, like mummified cats, or they refer to them as smoked cats. And so sometimes people.
That's terrible. I love cats. Anybody do that to cats, they need a beating.
I love cats as well.
If I caught somebody smoking a cat or something, I'd throw them a beating. I promise you I would.
It is terrible. It is terrible, terrible. So they have these poor kitties, and one of them was actually found in Ohio not too terribly long ago. So it's a weird thing that they did, sort of practicing sympathetic magic. They would sometimes take the cats and take a rodent with them, or put them together so that it was as though if you had a rodent problem, well, if you put one of these smoked cats in there, then it would magically make the rodents go away. It was sort of like a weird good luck kind of thing as well. It was really strange.
Now, there's more people that, and I hate to say this, but it's true. There's more people that I'm aware of now that practice things like, witchcraft and voodoo than I've ever known in my life. And so, like, I've talked to off the air, like some magicians, about how things like occultism and magic are on the rise and stuff. So that's why I bring up protection so much. And here, I don't want people to be afraid of magic curses and stuff as they move around in their life, because, that causes psychosis to begin with, right? So you just, you need to just be, I guess your belief, people need to understand the power of belief. Most, even Christians can pray like the blood of Jesus or whatever, and they're fine. At least they appear to be fine. And I think that has a lot to do with their beliefs and stuff. So, but anyways, I don't want to get too far into that deep rabbit hole, but there is a fascinating thing about this, because the history and lore behind all of these relics, I wonder sometimes if they really are haunted, if they really do carry some type of bad energy. Like, I know what people are thinking right now. They're thinking, well, Dr. Heather Lynn, you're into some dark history. Does anything bad ever happen to you energetically? Like, has any weird things happened to you as you've went down this road? Because I'm sure you found some dark stuff. You're filling your mind with a lot of this stuff too.
Oh, well, yes. And that's something that I wasn't sure whether or not I wanted to include in the book or but I thought I really should, I guess, because I did end up having some things happen. I did not think that would be the case. I just thought this might be an interesting sort of study. I approached it in just a very, clinical sense, and I thought it might actually be fun. So, it was actually really difficult for me to get through it. I didn't realize that I would face so much negativity, I guess, is negative energy. I know it sounds very superstitious to say that, but yes, I felt a lot of negativity. It started when I found a particular book. I was in the thrift store looking around, just looking for antiques, something I call retail archaeology. I found a book on the floor called the Encyclopedia of Witchcraft and Demonology. It was just a really cool book, and it was just lying there waiting for me to find it, so it seemed. So it was like $1.50 or something, and I thought, oh, great, this is just in time. So
of course it would be cheap, right?
It was really cheap. It was like $1.50 or something. Yeah, so I thought, oh, this is perfect. And so I grabbed it. I felt like it was just wanting me to buy it. So I thought, well, I'll take a look at this later. But so later, though, I started looking into research libraries, and at one particular time I was looking through archives, and my heart started racing really, really bad. I started shaking all over, and I actually fell to the floor. The librarian had to call an ambulance, I made quite a scene. I was taken to the hospital, and my heartbeat was it was at peak beats per minute. It was unreal. They released me later, though, and said that they had no idea what was wrong, and so they sent me to the cardiologist. So after that, I was like, okay, well, I didn't get an appointment right away. So about a week later, I was at another library studying scans of 16th century devil's packs when the very same thing happened. And this time I didn't want to make a scene, so I managed to drive myself to the emergency room. And again, I was just released. They said, well, everything looks fine. Your heart's just racing. And, so I thought, well, maybe I'm having a panic attack or something, even though I was quite calm and had no reason to panic. So I didn't know what was going on. And I started getting just nightmares about very specific demons and very specific things. And again, really? Very specific, and it was quite frightening, but I attributed it, and I haven't had nightmares in so long.
So were you thinking at this point in time, were you thinking, oh no, I've gone and done it? I've went down in the deep end, and now I've attracted this stuff, and this may be real.
No, still I didn't. I denied it. I thought, well, I'm researching all this spooky old stuff, and it's probably just, getting in my head a little bit. And so I thought, well, and I started waking up in the middle of the night, freezing cold, and I mean freezing cold. I was trembling and just so cold I can't even describe it, and my heart was just beating through the roof. And so, I finally was able to get into the physician, and I had numerous checks. I went to the Cleveland Clinic, a very renowned hospital, and saw multiple specialists after specialists. All of them told me my heart was healthy, which, I didn't think would have been a surprise because I'm sort of a health nut. I exercise and do what I'm supposed to do. And but they said, no, it's not your heart. And there's nothing wrong except maybe something with the electrical system inside. And so they sent me to an electrophysiologist. Now at this point, I'm trying to get through this book. I'm just going through all of this, and it was really slowing down the progress of my book, because then it started this whole thing where every time I would open my laptop to work on my book, it would just happen like this after a while. And I thought, this is ridiculous. I just couldn't even put a finger on it. And they said it definitely wasn't a panic attack because everything else was normal, but my heart was just skyrocketing. So after seeing the electrophysiologist, he informed me that there was, quote, something interfering with the electrical pathways of my heart. When I asked him what, he said he didn't know and that nobody knew. And so I got more second opinions, and all of them have the same diagnosis, which was a sudden onset of what they called inappropriate sinus tachycardia. So
what the
tachycardia, hell is that? Right. It was tachycardia, meaning the fast heart rate, and it was coming from the sinus node of the heart. And they called it inappropriate because they just couldn't find an appropriate trigger for these attacks. They said, although my heart was acting healthy and normal, and it was coming from a good place, there wasn't any kind of skip beats or anything to worry about. They just said, it's weird. Sorry. I don't know what to tell you. And I was like, okay, great. And so this diagnosis took so many months to get. And then they ended up giving me a beta blocker to calm that. And so that really helped. But, it was just really crazy. And then once I finally got that in line, I thought, okay, I was working late one night and I was finishing a chapter. And then all of a sudden, electricity in my house just surged crazy bad. So much so that an outlet just burst into flames, and it ignited a stack of National Geographic magazines that I had nearby. And I think had I been asleep, my whole house would have just gone up in flames.
At this point, well, we got to take a break, but I'm thinking at this point, you've got to be thinking there's something to this. We'll get into this though a little bit more when we come back here, guys. I'm not trying to freak y'all out, but this does sound like one of the new horror films that could be coming up. Somebody may actually make a movie about your story. That would be cool, wouldn't it? I think it sounds like one of a movie or something like The Conjuring. But anyways, we'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Hi, I'm Alex Exum, and you're listening to KTLK, The Fringe FM.
You're listening to Lighting the Void Radio. Who were the real ancient Egyptians? What is it about ancient Egypt that captivates us all? The critically acclaimed series Magical Egypt is back with all new episodes. Let Chance Gardner and company take you on another adventure through Magical Egypt in the new series Magical Egypt 2. Magical Egypt 2 attempts a forensic reconstruction of the science of the ancients through a study of ancient aesthetics. Also, the best researchers and authors in the field like John Anthony West, Graham Hancock, Laird Scranton, Robert Bouval, Lon Maladuquette, Aaron Cheek, and more join together to explore the topics of the esoteric and the hidden messages of the ancient Egyptians. Just go to magicalegypt.com right now and put in the code word FRINGE and get 10% off any download or order, including the groundbreaking original Magical Egypt series, as well as the new episodes in Magical Egypt 2. Also, check out the great work and the companion series at magicalegypt.com. Click the banner on the Fringe FM or go to magicalegypt.com and use the code word FRINGE and get 10% off your order today while it lasts.
Magic, the occult, history, health, news. These are just a few subjects discussed on my radio broadcast, The Secret Teachings. I offer unique and objective perspectives on new and old subjects alike, while welcoming guests and presenting my own research with no filter. Visit my website for more information and to subscribe to my archive at www.thesecretteachings.info. And find me on The Fringe FM live Monday through Friday, midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern on The Fringe FM.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now. The Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
The Fringe FM isn't just a radio station. We also provide services for all your audio production needs. If you are interested in live radio or pre-recorded podcasts, we're here to help. We even do audio enhancements and voiceovers if needed. If you want to do a podcast or live radio show and even want the option to syndicate on terrestrial radio, from simple audio file enhancement to live production and call screening, we have you covered. We have worked with some of the best professionals in the business in order to provide coaching instruction for content creation, show structure, and more. Contact The Fringe Digital Media for more at info@thefringe.fm. That's info@thefringe.fm. Or call 501-777-5631 for a consultation.
Hi, this is Sammy. Join us in the Deep South as we're lighting the void with Joe Roop on The Fringe FM.
Hey, is that a new music app?
Yeah, check it out. Surfer Music Discovery. It links to thousands of online stations, but the twist is you see the song names and artists that are now playing live.
That's different. No guessing. Looks like a waterfall of music.
So many formats. Rock, oldies, country, R&B, jazz, and a whole lot more.
How's that spelled?
Surfer. S-U-R-F-R.
Is it expensive?
It's free. No need to sign up or sign in.
Get the Surfer Music app free from Google Play or the App Store.
Yohoy there, Gigi here.
And I'm Cortana, and we're going to bring you on a journey through all things paranormal, metaphysical, ufology, and even psychedelic on our show,
Shift Happens, live, Fridays at 7 p.m. Pacific, that's 10 p.m. Eastern, on The Fringe FM.
And remember, kids, don't feed the Archons. Feed ducks instead.
Duck up.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Well, all right, welcome back to Lighting the Void. I'm your host, Joe Roop. We're here with Dr. Heather Lynn from drheatherlynn.com. We're talking about her book that's going to be released on April the 1st, which happens to be my birthday, Evil Archaeology. Fascinating stuff. We just got through talking about your story. So the question I asked before the break was, as you were looking into evil archaeology and studying these things and demons and possessions and curses and artifacts, did any negative things happen to you? And apparently they did. And I was hoping you would finish the story. And it's not that I'm fascinated with your negative experience. It's not, I just got to hear about it for some reason. Right. Yeah, so,
well,
you
another
were
thing
jogging
too,
or something, right? Isn't that where we left off?
Well, yeah, I did go on a jog, and again, I thought I had everything sort of under control, and I have a bike path behind my home, and so it was a Sunday morning, and I was jogging and doing nothing out of the ordinary, and then behind me, thankfully, there was a group of policemen, firemen, and EMTs who got together on Sunday mornings to ride their bikes, and they were there to catch me literally as I fell, because I just collapsed while I was jogging, and I wasn't overexerting myself or doing anything unusual, but yeah, again, my heart, it was not allowing me to sort of function anymore. It was just really, really incredible. So I did go through all of these different, medical issues having to do with the electricity specifically, like just there was something going on with the electricity in my body and in my heart. And so, but they were able to give me a medicine to sort of take care of that, which was nice. But then, of course, that was after it wasn't, I guess, my heart anymore that was suffering the electrical issue. That was when I had an electricity surge in my house that made an outlet burst into flames and set on fire a stack of National Geographic magazines that I had. So, yeah, it was quite distressing.
But even then, at this point, you weren't convinced that you.
I just figured these were just unrelated events, and I thought, well, it just for whatever reason, it didn't really hit me in any kind of way. No, but I did. I was getting a little tired of the whole nightmares, because the nightmares started getting very specific, and my room was extraordinarily cold. I mean, just absolutely freezing. And so this was something I ended up having to get an electric blanket, which probably in hindsight wasn't a good thing since I was having all these electricity issues, but thankfully nothing happened. No. But, I'm pretty optimistic, and, I was determined to get this book done, and I really didn't think about it. But then something happened, and it was really awful. We were speaking of cats earlier. I am also a cat lover.
Oh, no.
And yes, during the writing of this, he was always there with me, my cat Bailey. I referred to him as my research assistant because he was always stepping on my laptop keys and, inserting his own words into my manuscripts. And so, he was always there. But throughout the writing of the book, he was starting to get weak and inexplicably ill. And I took him to 3 different vets. And they didn't know what was wrong with him, and they didn't know what to do for him. And so it was interesting because I was going through medical issues, and at the same time he was. And so I didn't know what to do for him. They didn't know what to do. But the night that I finished the book, he actually collapsed.
Oh, my
and he died
gosh.
the next morning. And it just left me completely sick with grief, and it was very, very depressing. But as I mentioned, I'm not really a superstitious person, but if I were, I think maybe say there was a connection, and not just because of the terrible events, but yes, because of the energy that I felt. I hadn't experienced anything like that before, and it really just came to a head. And
I mean, come on, Doc. I mean, at that point, I'd be like, look, I'd be calling a priest or something. Yeah, that's just me, though.
At that point, a friend of mine who is a psychic medium suggested that maybe, yes, that I had a negative entity attach itself to this old demonology book that I brought home from the thrift store.
Yeah.
And so she theorized that this entity somehow jumped from the book to my poor cat and used the cat as a sort of scapegoat. And so obviously it's a lot of speculation, but she insisted on burning sage in my home office and blessing the area, just as a precaution. And I actually just did not tell her not to do that. I said, thank you very much. And, and so, it's just one of those things that I put in the afterword of the book, just as a personal note. I mean, it's, as with most things, it's these things are subjective, and we're prone to make connections between things. And so, maybe I'm just making connections between it, or maybe there is a connection. And so I'll probably not have those answers, but I thought I'd, just leave it out there for the readers to make of it what they will. But
and you still kept up with the research, right? So.
I didn't have to, thankfully, at that point. That was over once I lost my cat. It just so happened to be the night that I finished the book. But one interesting thing, though, that I actually told this, a little bit to my publisher, and the publisher informed me that they were late on printing the book. And I said, oh, and they said, oh, maybe there's something. He sort of laughed and just kind of said that it was weird because when they went to print, actually start the presses for Evil Archaeology, there was a terrible storm that knocked out the electricity in the printing plant, and that they weren't able to get it up and going to actually print the book. And he thought that he'd just let me know that as an interesting nugget. And I thought, oh, okay then. And so there's that too. It's almost as though the book did not want to be written, but it has been written, and it will be available April 1st. And it's actually available on Kindle right now. So if anybody's wanting to, I don't know, hedge their bets and read it early if they're not too afraid. But that was just my personal experience. But I thought that was really weird. I just learned that from the publisher this past week, actually, that the storm made it so that they were actually late in
Well, what I do
it.
is, and I'm just telling you what I do for safety, because I've had my own experience with this too. I happen to believe that certain things hold bad or good energy. I just do. It's just based on my experience. And to me, my experience is my truth. So like if I pick up an old book or something, I will kind of bind it in its own kind of way and keep it away from certain things, even after I know it sounds weird, but after you've had, I mean, think about all that stuff you went through, right? Would it be too bad to do something like that, even if you didn't really believe in it? I think it would be worth it at that point, just in case.
Absolutely. Oh, you know what? That's true. And I discussed that too as well, how to protect yourself. Because, historically people have used things like rituals and spells and herbs and amulets and things like that to protect themselves. And a lot of, people now, exorcists and, healers and these sorts of people, they agree that there are some basic methods to keep someone safe from these malevolent forces. And so, while there's not necessarily scientific proof about amulets or anything like this, it's like you said, it's, why not? I mean, it's very, it's a small thing to maybe do to maybe prevent something awful from happening. So, I don't know.
So tell me about some of these artifacts and relics. Are there some, like, how gruesome do these things actually get?
Well, how gruesome. And again, I guess that would depend on your...
Or you could, I guess you could say scary.
Yeah, some of them are gruesome and some of them are scary. So, again, like we talked about witch bottles, I guess that's gruesome in their own way.
Pretty gross. Right.
But so that's pretty awful. But other than that, I think some of the worst ones that I include in the book often have to do with sort of like the idea of desecrating the human body. And so, you have strange burials and different things like that. I think, it'd be hard to pick out the one, but let me give an example. Austrian archaeologists found a pit of just severed right hands in Egypt. Oh. And so it was just, for the archaeologists involved, you could imagine, just going about your day thinking you're going to be finding, hopefully, maybe some great ritual objects or, some texts that say something generally administrative. And then what you find instead is this pit of severed right hands. Mm-hmm. But it confirmed the validity of hieroglyphs and biblical verses even that depicted warriors cutting off the hands of their opponents. And the Egyptian lore actually describes a practice of proof of an enemy's defeat, where you would offer the severed hand of this enemy in exchange for the bounties of gold. And so, sometimes what may seem the most disturbing is when these human remains are found in really weird arrangements, like just severed right hands, for instance, or in the case of the Capuchin crypt in Rome, which for reasons we still don't know, the Capuchin monks started decorating their 5 rooms of a subterranean crypt below their little church with bones of their dead brothers. And this crypt is it's really, really odd, but in a way beautiful too. And I have a picture of it in my book, but there's also, if you Google the Capuchin crypt, you'll see the crypt features these decorative arrangements of skeletal parts of about 4,000 people. That includes the Capuchin friars as well as local orphans from the village. And so the remains are arranged in these just elaborate ways, things like chandeliers and candelabras and crosses, crowns, and there's even a coat of arms. And so it's you see this, again, you start to look at it and it almost looks like beautiful sculpture until you hone in on the individual parts, and it's like, wow, but that's femurs. There's people's like knuckle joints and hip bones, and it's really crazy.
You don't hear a lot of archaeologists talk about this stuff though, but I know they stumble upon it all the time.
Oh yeah. Well, I think that's because they don't want to sort of focus on those negative things. And kind of it brings me back to a situation I had when I was in school. I was working for the archaeology lab and volunteering to help some professors and this, that, and the other. And they were having trouble getting people interested in signing up for their anthropology class. And so they said, well, maybe you could make up some marketing collateral for Archaeology Day at the museum, and maybe we could get people interested and blah, blah, blah. And so I said, sure, I'll do that. So I made up some flyers that had I thought it was a pretty cool graphic of a spooky skull and, all these things. And it sort of said, if you're interested in this, I don't remember what the text was, but I included these images of this skull that was spooky and in situ. And they didn't look at it or see it. It was just, I went and had them printed and then brought them in. It was sort of a last minute thing. And their faces just dropped like, what's this? And it was too late to change anything. So we went along with it. And then afterwards they said, next time, try not to use such spooky iconography on any of the marketing material, because we don't want to give people the wrong idea. I said, well, it's not really spooky. It was just a skull. And if you're learning about anthropology, part of this is osteoarchaeology, where you have to identify, remains. You have to look at a skull and be able to tell whether it was, a child or an adult, or et cetera. So why is there anything objectionable to showing a skull? And they said, we don't want people to get the wrong idea. And so I think it just goes along those ideas of just not wanting to sort of romanticize or hype up any sort of like aspect of archaeology that could be deemed as scary or negative or commercial in any way. But at the same time, if they don't show those aspects of it, it's A, dishonest, and B, I think they're missing opportunities to get people interested that may have been interested in otherwise. So I don't know, but yeah, you don't see a lot of it published. You'll see it in some news articles here or there, but it's not something that a lot of them will focus on.
Well, I think it's also important to educate people on some of this stuff, because what I found is, number one, people get the wrong idea about a lot of things that are deemed bad or they think are bad, yes, and they're really not. And secondly, like I said earlier, not everything's love, light, and rainbows. And if there is really some type of dark force that's in the world that's been behind all this stuff since the dawn of man, it would kind of be helpful to know about it, I would think.
Yeah, you would think, absolutely. And even archaeologists long ago were too afraid of these things and didn't want to sort of admit that these things existed. And in 1790, archaeologists uncovered a massive Aztec statue of the goddess Coatlicue. She was the goddess of childbirth, and at the site in Mexico City, they found this statue and thought that it was probably possessed or evil or something. So they actually went to the trouble of reburying it. I mean, this was no small feat. The statue was about 9 feet tall, but they thought surely this can't be seen by other people. Yeah. It freaked them out. They thought it was so scary. The statue was wearing a skirt made of snakes and a necklace made of human hands and hearts, and her arms were sort of put in a predatory or like striking position, and she leaned forward slightly, so it made it look like she was going to attack. And again, 9 feet tall, so it was very scary. But they reburied it, and still after that, when it was found again, they didn't want to put it in a museum. They thought it'd be too scary for the museum. But it is actually in a museum now, Mexico City's National Museum of Anthropology, so it can be viewed finally. But it was a long way to get there because she was so scary, people didn't want to see it.
Earlier you brought up the jinn, and this is something that I've talked to with a couple of people, of cultists that have come on the show. And one of them said, and he told me that it was Nineveh Shadrach, and he told me that everything that we've called demons, even some angels that we've called angels, are all just jinn. And I think, I'm sure that's his belief system, but when I looked into this historically, it does seem like that's where it all comes from, or what things that were known as the jinn. And then somehow or another they were called daemons, then demons, and it gets kind of confusing.
Yes, and that's due to what's called religious syncretism, and that's when you have these sort of, a god, and then after a while the culture shifts, or invaders come in, or people move, and they bring their own gods and ideas of those gods, and they adopt the older gods, and they sort of push them together. call them something else, or they evolve their names, or somehow they just get mixed together. You see a very good example of this. It's a nice clean example of it with the Greeks and Romans, who will have, their versions of, say, Poseidon and Neptune is the same, but not. So, but you see this, it starts in a way I could see why he would say that, because the jinn sort of are those demons of even Judeo-Christianity. They come from the demons of Mesopotamia a lot of times. So you'll get sort of like this one demon figure. And then after time, when the culture changes and it evolves into another sort of god, but carries on the same sort of features or characteristics, but then it's called something else. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so you start seeing these connections all the way through. And just because they're so frightening looking too, it's easy to just they literally demonize them in that way. And so, but yes, there are a lot of connections between individual demons and jinn or the demons of Jewish belief systems, and we kind of all share those ideas. I mean, even now when people are using the Pazuzu, the Mesopotamian demon, to put it into stories like the Exorcist book. I mean, it's as though we're still using those demons to inspire and make people fearful. So, what goes around comes around. But yeah.
Are you kind of relieved that you're done with this book? Or are you going to keep digging into it? I am
yeah, no, I'm actually kind of, I'm a little bit relieved. I am a little bit relieved that I'm done. Although the subject matter seems to follow me around, unfortunately. I'm working on another book at the moment, and it actually ventures off into some more Sumerian demonology. But yeah, I try to stay away from it now as much as I can. But no, I am glad I'm done with it. I don't know if I'll revisit the idea. I think I don't want to say I exhausted the subject in this book, because I didn't even really scratch the surface. I only covered, a lot of the sort of Western ideas, the Middle Eastern ideas. I could have gone even further into Far Eastern, ideas as well. And so maybe that will be in a follow-up. So plenty out there for it. I'll have to be sure that maybe I have to sage things and do all these like rituals beforehand and take that more seriously. I had people who told me, when I told them I'm going to write a book on evil, I had people from many different faiths and many different traditions tell me the same thing, which was either don't do it, or, oh my gosh, do this, that, or the other for protection before you do. So I should have taken the advice, I think.
Are you doing that now? I'm just curious. I would do it. No matter how silly it seems, I would do it. And believe me, when I do things like say a banishing ritual or sage something, don't think for a second that in my mind, I'm not thinking this is silly, like, why am I doing this? But I've found that, like, in my life, if I don't do it or do certain prayers and stuff, I don't know, it just makes me feel better. There's some type of weird psychological hang up to it, though. You don't want to get too hung up on it. I can see why people don't want to go down that road at all,
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. And it is, the archaeological record has a lot of, things in it that could be looked at as scary, but I think in a way, the historical record might have more, because you have what you're having with the history is like the voice of the experiencer coming through. And so, whereas with archaeology, you have to see the artifacts and sort of, interpret and understand those things. That gives you a level of distance. But then if you look at the historical accounts, then it's like not so distant. You start to be able to, put yourself in that position. And I think it makes it a little more frightening. So, in the book, I discuss ritual human sacrifice and what we know about that. And that wasn't a happy chapter either. So I guess the book's starting to sound like a real downer now that I'm talking about it.
Well,
yeah,
it goes into the real. Well, see, here's the thing: what everybody talks about, ancient aliens and Sumeria and Babylon and Zechariah Stitch, but I think it's important that we try to know the actual truth about our history. Like, as much as we can. I'm not saying Stitching's wrong, but I mean, that's something I wanted to talk to you about too. I don't know if what your views are on Stitching's work and stuff, but it seems like they make it out to be just this alien god that seeded the planet and for slavish type reasons, and that's it. But when it seems to me like there's a lot more to it than that, especially after what you've been telling me.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you on that. That's actually the topic of the book that I am working on right now. I'm actually finishing it and sending it off to the publisher tomorrow morning. So that will be a wrap. And that's exactly what I'm looking at in that particular book called The Anunnaki Connection. And I look at Sitchin's interpretations, and I go a little deeper than just the the narrative that's going around now about the sort of spaceships and this ancient alien approach. I take a harder look at the texts themselves. And then I also look at some lesser known texts, including one of my favorite ones was sort of showing the very human aspects of the Anunnaki gods, including what foods they like to eat. So that's something that you don't hear a lot of.
How did you find out that kind of information, though?
Oh, there's you can definitely just do the research. The tablets will tell exactly what it is. Yeah, see, that's the thing, that this overall narrative, this there's the mainstream narrative people like to talk about, and I even talk about the accepted historical narrative. But what we seem to have going on more recently is this sort of mainstream narrative, and then there's an alternative narrative that now people aren't wanting to go against. So the old sort of alternative narrative is sort of turning into a mainstream narrative. And this is something that I wanted to fight against in the writing of this new book. I wanted to look at some of the things that people aren't looking at. So a lot of times people look at the same, cylinder seals, and they just talk about this whole, Anunnaki theory of alien contact, and which is fine, but there's so many tablets with so much more information that if you were to branch out of that and look at it, you find a whole different way of looking at it. And some of it is, I think, even more wild than even the extraterrestrial account. And so I go very deep into that in this new book. And I everything that I do, Evil Archaeology or my Anunnaki material, any of this stuff, what I do is I make sure I cite everything. It's 100% scholarly. I definitely look at these fringe ideas, but I want to make sure that everything that I say is backed up with science and fact. And so I think that a lot of times you'll have people that, they'll just write about these things, and then they just keep regurgitating these same ideas and these same authors. And while it's important to sort of bring up these authors, I think it's more important at this stage now in our kind of quest for truth these days to look outside of that and pull in some more information. And so that's what I try to do. So yes, I found a lot of components of the divine diet and eating habits of the Mesopotamian gods and goddesses, which are very well preserved in the Sumerian texts. And so they tell exactly what it is that they ate. There's even recipes. So that's kind of interesting. It would sort of point to the fact that the Anunnaki gods were actual, real, tangible beings, given what they like to eat. So yeah,
fascinating stuff. Yeah, that is
initially,
fascinating.
yeah. So there's a lot to look at with these Sumerian texts. I think we're only scratching the surface.
I know. Well, more from Dr. Heather Lynn. We'll be right back, guys. Don't go anywhere.
Out there.
There's something out here.
And so are we. KTLK Digital Broadcasting, The Fringe FM. Want to know what's on The Fringe FM? Check out our schedule at thefringe.fm.
Greetings, galactic community. This
is Suzanne Ross, host of Sci-Spy Radio, every Wednesday evening from 5 to 7 p.m. Pacific. Join me for this brand new show featuring a revolutionary new genre, sci-spy, merging science and spirituality to give us answers to the greatest mysteries of creation. Together, scientific discovery and spiritual revelation reveal the truth about who we are, where we came from, why we're here, and where we're going. Tune in to Sci-Spy Radio every Wednesday from 5 to 7 p.m. Pacific and discover the truth for yourself at thefringe.fm.
Your home has needs. It needs a healthy, dry environment all year round. Start by getting rid of the worst air in the basement and crawl space, where the problems begin and make the whole house sick. Introducing the new Smart Wave Ventilation Unit. It has advanced technologies to continuously reduce moisture, mold, and odors, and expel radon, gases, and pollutants. And now, Wave units include carbon monoxide detection to automatically expel air at a high rate and send you an alert. It also has an app so you can remotely monitor the conditions. Wave is a comprehensive, maintenance-free, affordable solution that will transform your entire home. Protect your home and family with what it needs. Give it a new Smart Wave Ventilation Unit. For more information, call 888-717-WAVE. That's 888-717-WAVE. Or go to dryhealthyhome.com. That's dryhealthyhome.com.
Wave Home Solutions for a healthy, comfortable home.
This is Paranormal News. I'm John Jeter. Rocks from the moon that have been preserved since the Apollo program are out and about to be opened up for the first time. 9 research teams will soon get their hands on the precious evidence. These rocks are from the Apollo 15, 16, and 17 missions. One of the samples is still wrapped in the metal tube that was used to pull it out of the ground. It was collected in 1972 by Apollo 17 astronauts Harrison Schmitt and Gene Cernan. Other bits are as old as 50 years. These samples have been preserved in either helium or in a deep freeze since they were brought back all those decades ago. NASA's acting director of the Planetary Science Division, Lori Glaze, says these samples were deliberately saved so we could take advantage of today's more advanced and sophisticated technology to answer questions we didn't know we needed to ask. Don't forget about the moon bugs, man. Finally, something that would have me running faster than I've ever run in my life. An Argentinian man got a little too familiar with what he describes as a shadowy, giant, man-like creature in a hat that chased him for 10 miles. He became hysterical about his encounter as he showed up to work at a sugar mill. Locals say he had a run-in with a creature known as El Familiar. Legend has it that when the sugarcane industry was on the decline, the government allegedly took a bailout from the devil himself for a price. In return for protecting their groves, he would perform an annual human sacrifice and be dragged to hell by a headless black dog with a chain around his neck. Those lucky enough to survive come out of the fields with their clothes ripped off and bodies scratched. It's said they paid large sums of money to keep this all quiet. Read these stories and more at ParanormalRadio.com. I'm John Jeter, and this is Paranormal News.
Hey, Fringe FM listeners. Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or no Wi-Fi available, you can still listen to every minute of the Fringe FM by calling 701-719-3971. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. Saves your data plan and no extra cost if you have unlimited minutes. Call 701-719-3971. That's 701-719-3971. Listen to the Fringe FM on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Follow The Fringe FM on Facebook and Twitter at The Fringe FM.
right, welcome back to Lighting the Void. I'm your host, Joe Roop. We're here with Dr. Heather Lynn. Pretty creepy story that you told us about what happened to you while you were researching this stuff. I don't even know why I went there with you, Dr. Lynn. I just had a feeling that as you were studying this stuff, I honestly had no idea that these things happened to you. Didn't hear it in an interview, didn't pre-study this or anything. I just figured that since you were going down this road of studying like evil artifacts and demon possessions and curses, that some, negative things were going to happen. And boy, I did not expect all of that. So it kind of validates it, but I'm glad you're staying on the scholarly path towards it. But another thing that I wanted to discuss is when you go into these subjects like ancient Sumeria, evil archaeology and things, when you really get down to the truth or try to get down to the truth of things, what I have found is it's not very pretty. A lot of people don't like it. And I think you even got some pushback before your books came out. I guess people are leaving you bad reviews before they even read the books. So there you go, right? Yeah. You're a renegade again. How does that even happen, though?
That's something I wish I had the answer for, because this was really frustrating. I had there was a pretty well-known podcast and group of people who are legitimate, credentialed archaeologists that have made it their sort of little mission to go out and debunk everybody, and so I guess I made it on that list because they went on Amazon before the book. Well, the like I said, Evil Archaeology is available now on Kindle, but it's not available on paperback, and it only just became available on Kindle about 5 days ago. And so before any of it was available, they went on Amazon and left a bad review. And
wow.
It was just like, oh, okay, how are you allowed to even review this before, So it was a little silly, but I did thankfully have some people who spotted that and alerted me to it, and then they were kind enough to leave some not good reviews, because they were honest enough to be able to say, hey, I can't review this if I've not read it, but I'm just, putting this out here that this is something wrong. And so, so it became sort of like a review war online where people were like leaving these bad reviews and good reviews. And it was a big argument back and forth over Evil Archaeology. And what was interesting was, they hadn't read the book, but then they had started referencing the title saying, oh, well, this is just going to be another one of those, books or whatever. And then what they did was they had, they set out a full attack, and they tried to scoop the book by publishing their own book that was about evil archaeology, but not. It's sort of a, I
see what's going on here.
It was called, I don't know if it was called Sinister Archaeology or something like that. It was just another sort of book, and it was described as something very similar to the one that I was coming out with. But when you actually looked into it and found what it was about, it wasn't even about the topics at all. It was sort of like clickbait in a book that was getting you to read about how terrible, quote, pseudo-archaeology is. And it was this big propaganda piece. And it was actually published by a university press, no less. It's insane. And then, because it was published by a university press, it was like $60. It wasn't even like the normal price of a book. And I thought, well, there you go. If you want everybody to get your propaganda message, maybe price it a little more affordably. But it was just, it was really something. But thankfully, after a while, Amazon did take those reviews down and left it with a clean slate. And so, but I had to go over that, and that wasn't pretty. And currently, Amazon is, they were giving me trouble with my older book about the Sumerian controversy, as I had referenced. They kept flagging it, saying they had gotten complaints, and they even started putting a little label on it that said that this somehow they were getting indications that it was, quote, fake news or inaccurate reports. And I thought, oh my gosh, is this what we've come to? And so I had to take it down to revise it. I put it back up. I didn't have anything left to revise. There was nothing I could do. I looked for it to say maybe there were keywords that, I had included that were red flags in their algorithm. Maybe things like Nazis or Skull and Bones or Rothschild bankers and those sorts of things. But I couldn't take those out because they were important to the report. And so I was at a standstill, and I couldn't get the book published. And so as a result, during that time, other people started selling or trying to sell these books, my backlist, for thousands of dollars, which is a total scam and not right. And when I told Amazon about it, they said, well, there's nothing they're going to do about it. They can't do anything about it. And I thought, wow, working with Amazon isn't always the best. So I'm grateful now to have had a publisher, sort of a bigger publisher, come in and, help me fight against that with at least the publishing of Evil Archaeology. And then
a lot of controlled narratives going on right now. That's for sure. I mean, it
was quite the fight. Yeah. Oh yeah. There's a lot of it, even in the, sort of alternative community. There's this, like, I was saying before, we need like an alternative to the alternative. Sometimes it seems, so it's sad.
What you should have done is put on your cover, like something about aliens and archaeology. And then as you go into the book, just kind of say, okay, what we're really going to talk about. That way,
yeah.
Because that's what everybody wants to hear. The aliens were here and the aliens are here and they seeded us and they're beautiful, lovely creatures, right? And that's
the beautiful, lovely creatures part is the part that I take exception with. I think that there's probably, there's a wave of that going around where it's like, oh, it's wonderful. Let's almost worship these. It's almost become a new age sort of religion of this positive, channeling these beings and all this. But from my research, it doesn't seem to work out very well when people in history start to channel or summon these sort of like Anunnaki beings or these seven sages. It doesn't seem to work out so well. It works out in the sense that they get this like great technology or they get these great gifts and insights, but then eventually, nothing comes for free. So it's time that they pay up. And a lot of times what you see in these, situations are that these civilizations resort to mass violence and bloodshed and accounts of human sacrifice and ritualistic child killings and all these things. You see that through all these different ancient religions that have or cultures that have sort of thought that they were channeling these helpful angels or beings, and while they do seem to get some benefits and rewards, like I said, it's not without a cost.
Yeah, so it makes me wonder, like, if, as you were actually digging into the truth of our past and what role did the Sumerian demons play in the development of our civilization, as you were looking into these things, I kind of tend to think maybe there was some spiritual pushback. Maybe there's certain forces, and this is just me, I'm not saying you have to agree with it, but I kind of think maybe there are some certain forces that don't want the real information to be spilled. That could very well be true. And bad things kind of happen to people that dig too deep. That's been known to happen for a lot of researchers, actually.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I don't know how anybody could write about these topics for too long, and if they're going through these sorts of negative experiences, it just, I wouldn't want to make it my full-time career. I think dealing with the evil aspects of it, but so thankfully I am finished with this book, but. No, some strange things, definitely. Like I said, I talked to an exorcist about these things, and he just told me that, yes, to this day there are people who are, having these experiences and needing exorcisms, and it's just, it's not something that's relegated to the ancient past, and I sort of know that firsthand. In the book, I discuss my own sort of eyewitness account of a modern day exorcism that was quite
You got
strange.
To witness one?
Yes. It was a quite unconventional time. At least I thought so. I was brought up Catholic. And of course my view of exorcism was sort of tainted by that. I always thought of it as just this, priests and some holy water and all these different things. And so I ended up visiting a small town in South Carolina where the population was less than 300 people. On one of these particular nights, it was a Wednesday night, an acquaintance that I had there just sort of, I wasn't researching for a book or anything. I was just sort of there observing and spending time with some people. And this particular person invited me to attend a church service at a small church that they went to. It was a small Christian Bible-based church just on the outskirts of town. The road to the church was literally dirt. It was pretty out there. So we get there, and nothing completely unusual, but the pastor was really excited and exuberant. He ran around all over the place and jumped up on the pews, and he had so much energy. He got people very excited, so much so that they ended up rolling around on the floor. They were, I guess, speaking in tongues, what they referred to it as. And it was quite a scene. And then out of nowhere, a woman in a hospital bed just sort of was wheeled out on the floor. And she looked sort of like she was half asleep or just, very sick and haggard. She wasn't elderly. She was about in her late 40s or 50s, but she just looked older than she was. And one by one, members of the congregation started gathering around her bed. And so my friend who brought me there looked over at me, and after having really not much to say until now, he asked if I had anything to confess because they were about to do an exorcism, which, again, I was completely taken aback.
Why do you have to confess? That's weird.
Yeah, exactly. I know, right? So as a former Catholic, I thought, well, confession, like are we doing confession? Like, I don't know. And I said, no, I wasn't quite sure why it was confession time. But I also just at that point, I didn't want to draw any attention to myself. And so I definitely declined. And so again, I was skeptical, but like completely intrigued at this point. And so I went up to get a closer look at what was happening, because I was one of only 3 people left sitting in the pews. So I felt a little like, out of the game. And so I went up there and watched closely and saw that the preacher had put his hands over this woman who was in the hospital bed, and then she started sort of speaking in this weird way. And so she started moaning and writhing, and then from the same door where she was wheeled out came a procession of 4 live goats.
What?
Goats, absolutely.
I
was like,
this is
goats,
crazy, man.
Like, goats, yes. At this point, the goats were walking aimlessly through this little church. And then I just couldn't take my eyes off the goats. And so at the bed, though, started shaking so loudly and rattling because, again, it was a hospital bed. So it was just rattling. And so I looked over, and the woman in the hospital bed was screaming. And it was frightening. And weirdly, some of the children that were there witnessing this, they started giggling. There wasn't anything. It was just an all-around weird vibe.
I'm getting the creepiest feeling I ever got in my entire life. Were you not creeped out? Well,
I was extraordinarily creeped out. With my own personal experience here with writing the book, I was, I think, in denial, and I was getting a little spooked, but it was just basically being spooked. And then I looked at everything as isolated events. But in this particular situation, this was totally weird. And of course, I knew I was there for an exorcism at this point, so I was probably going in expecting something spooky. But it was more than spooky. I was very uncomfortable at this point. But yeah. So the goats are still walking around, and this woman is yelling, and it was going in between sort of shrieking really high and then guttural growling sounds. And then she was starting to sort of make a word, or what sounded like a word, and it would come out as Alu. And so then the preacher asked, "Demon, is that your name?" And all she would say in response is Alu. So I'm assuming that was the demon's name. Oh, and so this went on for about an hour. And at this point, people were, I think, getting tired, and they were getting quieter. And some of the children who were once giggling uncontrollably started falling asleep on the church floor. The preacher, though, never left the woman's side. And then out of nowhere, just like she had woken up from some fever dream, she sat up straight and put her arms around the preacher and gave him a really big hug. She pulled away, and there seemed to be like this clarity in her eyes that just wasn't there before. Like she had woken up. And at this point, the congregation members who had witnessed this started clapping and cheering. And again, the goats are still walking around in between the pews. I mean, they were just sort of meandering. And I still was just not sure what to think about that. But everybody was really happy at this point. And so the woman in the hospital bed, she gets up, and then with the help of a few other people, she walked into a meeting room that was adjacent to the main area where this had all taken place. Everybody, including me, we went into this meeting room, and they had a whole offering of just punch and cookies, and like it was a little party that was planned. There was a step-in bathtub that they had used for baptisms. And so the preacher escorted the newly exorcised woman over to the tub and baptized her. So this little after party continued for about another hour or maybe even more, but the whole event took about 4 hours, and it was pretty exhausting. And so, at this point, it wasn't until the car ride back to the hotel that I asked about the goats, because this was really weighing on me.
I can't stop thinking about why the goats are there.
The goats are really bothering me. And so the explanation that I was given was that each goat was there to be the literal scapegoat. And so my friend went on to explain that the goats would be later slaughtered and sacrificed to get rid of the demons that possessed the woman, and the meat would be used in the food pantry or given to poor church members. And so, yeah, that as a vegetarian and animal lover, that made me feel a little bad, and so I couldn't shake that. So that's haunted me for quite a long time. Thankfully, I was not.
Wait, you don't eat meat at all?
No.
Well, it was nice talking to you, Doc. We got to let you go.
Okay,
I'm just playing.
It was great to be here.
No, I'm just playing. So,
I didn't.
You witnessed an exorcism, like a full blown exorcism.
It was an exorcism, but it was not any exorcism that I had never heard of an exorcism like that. So I like I said, I went in kind of thinking of it to be, I guess, what the movies would say an exorcism would be like, and so I didn't know there'd be goats. I didn't know that kids would be giggling and there was speaking in tongues, and I didn't know it would last so long. And I certainly didn't know that anybody would treat it as though it was just this casual thing and we'd have punch and cookies afterwards. And so, but what was a little scary, this was a lot longer too. After I started studying different aspects of ancient demonology, I actually came across the name Alu, and it was the name that, I supposedly this woman was calling out the name of this demon. I mean, this was like years later though, and like I said, this haunted me for a long time. And so I found that Alu, was actually the name of a Mesopotamian demon.
Oh, great.
And so, I mean, clearly Alu isn't a very grammatically complex word. It could just be sounds or common sounds that somebody could make, but still.
And kind of like Beetlejuice, right? That's what.
Well, yeah, I guess so. Maybe, yeah. So, I mean, there is a Sumerian demon named Alu, and he's a frightening looking demon that has no limbs, no ears, and actually no face. And he hovers over people at night as they sleep. He binds their arms, legs, and even their tongue, and is responsible for the experience of sleep paralysis. And then ultimately he'll possess people at that point. And so I don't know for sure. I couldn't say for sure if the woman in South Carolina had been bound to a hospital bed because she was bound there by Alu, the ancient Sumerian demon, or if it was just all in her head, or if it was a case of mass hysteria among all the people in the congregation.
What do you think? Off the record, away from academia, all of this just, what do you think? What does your gut tell you?
Well, if you just asked my gut and it had nothing to do with my head or thinking, I would say that this was a frightening experience of an actual possession of a demon. And so with that, again, that was just, that would be my heart and not my head speaking.
I mean, you might as well face it. You're probably, like Dennis mentioned in the chat room, you're probably a big part of that debunk list in academia already. But you're going to be up there with some big names, so don't worry about that.
Well, I don't know if that's a good list to be on, but it's one at least I would be more proud to be on a list like that than one that just goes along with what everybody says and thinks and does. So I'm all about looking for truth and following the evidence wherever it leads. even if it's not good news.
Even if it's not convenient.
Even if it's not convenient. Yes. And so, so again, I like to reflect on that exorcism and sort of analyze it now and think about it now. And there's a whole lot of different ways to look at it and, apply anthropological theory and some different things. But at the end of the day, I was there and I felt it. And what I felt was a great unease is the best way I can describe it. It wasn't necessarily fear because I was intrigued. It wasn't necessarily, it was unease. There was just this unease and a feeling that something wasn't quite right. And not just because somebody was screaming or things were happening, but also because of the children's laughter. That was something that, while it is, not unusual for children to laugh, it was the way they laughed and the timing of their laugh and the rolling on the floor and just the group hysteria of it all that just, I found myself surrounded in what would seem like just a really bad dream in that moment. So, and then just the quickness, which it all just stopped and everybody seemed to sort of
have cookies and punch afterwards.
Have cookies and punch and act as though it was just another, night at church. And that was an uneasy experience.
Well, Indiana Jones dealt with this too, so you're definitely going down the he did in Temple of Doom or whatever,
Oh yeah. Oh.
So at least
sure,
it didn't happen to you.
Right.
We're coming towards the end of the show. I want to talk to you a little bit about historically about protection and a little bit more about your book, if you don't mind, Dr. Heather Lynn, and then we'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. Well, that's freaky.
Yeah, with you.
This is Elle. I listen to Lighting the Void because it's interactive radio with good content, interesting guests, and a humble host, sharing this journey through the esoteric. Hey, Joe Roop. Thanks for having us along for the ride.
Thank you so much for a delightful evening.
Well, I got a lot of ground to cover.
Hi, this is Aaron Hunter, host of Real Paranormal Activity, the podcast where we tell real paranormal experiences of people from around the world. And we also conduct interviews with authors, investigators, psychics, and mediums. Real people, real stories, real fear. Thursdays at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern on The Fringe FM. See you then.
Hey, Fringe FM listeners. Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or no Wi-Fi available, you can still listen to every minute of the Fringe FM by calling 701-719-3971. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. Saves your data plan and no extra cost if you have unlimited minutes. Call 701-719-3971. That's 701-719-3971. Listen to the Fringe FM on any phone, anytime, anywhere.
Poor water quality is a major health issue, and it's only getting worse. Municipalities can't keep up, standards have dropped, and pollutants are increasing. Where does it all end? It ends by keeping the pollutants outside of your home with HydroCare's advanced systems available at Wave Home Solutions. No less than the best purification materials and processes have been developed by HydroCare to provide you with healthy, clean water for drinking, cooking, and showering. HydroCare far surpasses the competition in removing chlorine, odors, iron, lead, chemicals, limescale, and much more. Don't settle for less when it comes to your water. We'll take care of the toughest water problems for you, whether it's from a city or well source. Satisfaction guaranteed. For more information, call 888-997-WAVE. That's 888-997-WAVE. Or go to bestwater123.com. That's bestwater123.com.
Wave Home Solutions for a healthy, comfortable home.
You're listening to Lighting the Void Radio. Introducing Shadow Light Tarot from Waking Canvas, the Fringe FM's new contributing artist Eric Tisi. This hand-illustrated black and white self-published deck serves as a reinvention of the tarot, never before witnessed. Each of the several suits of this 88-card deck lineup form an infinite panoramic scene. Even the included visual companion guidebook is entirely hand-illustrated, cover to cover with beautiful visuals and esoteric symbols and artwork. The newly released deck comes in a custom magnetic box with its own travel pouch. The Shadow Light Tarot Premium Deck and its travel-sized mini deck Wonderlight Tarot are both available now from WakingCanvas.com. If you use the code word FRINGE, that's F-R-I-N-G-E at checkout, you'll receive an extra 10% off your entire order. To discover more, including a free reading and time lapses of all the illustrated artwork, make your way over to WakingCanvas.com today. That's WakingCanvas.com. Follow The Fringe FM on Facebook and Twitter at The Fringe FM.
Hey, is that a new music app?
Yeah, check it out. Surfer Music Discovery. It links to thousands of online stations, but the twist is you see the song names and artists that are now playing live.
That's different. No guessing. Looks like a waterfall of music.
So many formats. Rock, oldies, country, R&B, jazz, and a whole lot more.
How's that spelled?
Surfer. S-U-R-F-R.
Is it expensive?
It's free. No need to sign up or sign in.
Get the Surfer Music app free from Google Play or the App Store.
Start your evenings with The Fringe FM long before those other shows get started. Exclusively live on The Fringe FM, hear the Quantum Hologram Matrix with the Reverend John Polk, Tuesdays at 5 Pacific, 8 Eastern. And our newest show, Sci-Spy Radio with Suzanne Ross, Wednesdays at 5 Pacific, 8 Eastern. Then stay up because we're burning the midnight oil well into the morning hour. The truth is out there, and so are we. Lock it in, The Fringe FM.
Well, I had a whole list of questions here for Dr. Heather Lynn that I wrote down before the show, and as she started getting into her experiences with negative energy and witnessing possession, I kind of forgot about it. So I got to get to some of these questions. I know they're important. But we're here with Dr. Heather Lynn, who wrote the book Evil Archaeology. Yeah. You wrote other books too, but this is the one that I'm fascinated with right now. And you have... what are the titles of your other books? You have to forgive me, but I know you wrote like 3 or 4 different books, right?
Oh yeah, I have some stuff out there. The Sumerian Controversy, Anthrotheology, Land of the Watchers. I've contributed to some works as well, but all of that can be found on my website. And like I said, right now it's Evil Archaeology is the one that I think is probably the most exciting for me at the moment. So. It's coming out, and I think I've had the most. I don't want to say the most fun writing it because it started out fun and then it ended up not being so fun, but maybe the most experiences while writing it. So it's definitely something that I'm looking forward to hearing anyone's feedback on to see if it was worth it or not.
I'm definitely going to read it.
See if I was able to do it.
I've got to.
I'm hoping that I was able to help people sort of get a better idea of what evil is, what demons were, what they are, possessions, and this sort of thing. And I also I do discuss, as you mentioned before, ways to protect yourself from sort of demons or negativity or however that may be. And it's based on my discussions with exorcists and, some things like that, because I am not an exorcist. And so I wanted to make sure that in a lot of ways I got the input from the experts. I also interview Mike Ricksecker. He's a paranormal investigator. So I try to look at just getting experts in from different angles to help me sort of identify these things, because I am not an expert on the devices and things used to detect evil, but I felt that it was important to put those things in there because people are using these tools in order to sort of try to detect evil entities. And so a lot of information's in there. Definitely how to protect yourself, because I thought that was important. I wanted to end the book on a good note because I guess technically I didn't do that though in the afterword, but I did want to try to end the whole study on a more positive note so that people didn't leave it feeling like, wasn't that a bunch of scary, gory, things? Because I start the book on an awfully gory note. I actually take people through a fictional but 100% accurate account of what it would have been like to have your head drilled by a prehistoric shaman.
Oh, nice.
And what they did to do that. Yeah, it wasn't an easy surgery. They used a reindeer antler that would have been whittled to a point, and then they would just rub it between their palms as though they were starting a fire to sort of just drill it. And then
while you're awake.
While you're awake. Yes, they would take the little patch, and then they would shave a little patch, where they were going to make the hole, and they would perforate it, and then they would just cut away at that, and then they would just start drilling on the skull, and you could only imagine the scent of burning hair and bone as it's drilling into your own head.
It's a pretty dumb question by me. While you're awake, no, they didn't have anesthesiologists back then. They probably gave you something, to bite on, or just say brace yourself, son.
Or some sort of drug that they could have, maybe had with an herb or plant or something. But they wouldn't want you too sort of, psychedelic, because that was part of the point of doing this, was to calm you down, if you were having some problem. And they would take, maybe 3 hours of drilling like this. And they only stopped after you would hit the yellow tinged fluid that of cerebral fluid. And they would wipe the head clean after that and place some animal hide on it, and then urinate in the hole. And so that was the way they cleaned it. And then they pack the hole with reindeer fat. And so
I just lost every bit of appetite that I had.
It was delicious, I'm sure.
I was thinking about what I'm going to eat after the show. And are you done? Are you done with the whole thing, or is there still more to it?
Sure. Oh, no. They would push him back and say, "They're on. Go on and heal now." They would have the patient's blood after that and mix it with fat and ashes and dip their finger into it and start painting. With that, they use that. But otherwise, that was pretty much the extent of it. The shaman would collect the skull disc and wear it around his neck as sort of a trophy of like, look what I did. And there you'd have a hole in your head, and hopefully you survive that critical stage of the 48 hours, and afterwards you'd, I guess, be cured. Hopefully, we don't know, but so some people did survive these. We had enough evidence to suggest that people would survive this. So, and it's still done today in parts of the world, and even in the hospitals, it's not quite done. So obviously, archaically, it's done surgically now. But so I do start the book off on one note, but I try to end it on maybe a more pleasant unicorns and rainbows note, if you would, and that's how to protect yourself.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. People, they love to hear about this topic. So what can we do to protect ourselves according to what history says? Well,
one thing that both history and contemporary exorcists seem to agree on is that you should try to learn the name of the demon, which I think would be very difficult because then you're actually engaging with that entity or trying to.
Yeah, you got to talk to it.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. And so you have to sort of be on guard and be skeptical because they would be known as tricksters. Demonic entities throughout history have been known to lie and to try to trick. And so that's something kind of important. But if you can sort of try to get a grasp on what you think it is, and that would be a help. But otherwise, you could just look for unusual mood swings. Demons throughout history have been known to tease and mock their victims. And so they won't fully manifest, though, until they know that the victim is at their weakest and most vulnerable, and that's when they want to exploit. And so, if you have a normally quiet and peaceful home and it becomes weirdly chaotic, then, there might be something to look at. Things like activities associated sometimes with poltergeists, such as moving furniture, flying objects, or even electrical disturbances. Unfortunately, I found that out then after the fact. That these can be signs too. And so, with keeping these things in mind, that these are sort of the things to look for. I mean, you want to maybe be vigilant. And Bill Bean, the exorcist I discussed in the book, he refers to it as warrior mode. You sort of don't want to get to a point where you're seeing these activities like the poltergeist disturbances or unusual sounds and smells, orbs, things like this. You sort of want to prevent that. But if it does get to that point, one of the main things you can do is something as simple as cleaning your personal space and living environment, which I know sounds really crazy, but that is something that we see echoed throughout many cultures and even up to contemporary times, that if your home, office, or even car is a mess of some sort, it can create this just unpleasant environment that can be known to attract demons. So, I mean, that would be step number one. And that's really, funny. And then when you look at an account in history, there is a demon sometimes referred to as the Mesopotamian toilet demon. It was warned about in the Babylonian Talmud. So this toilet demon is actually not only Babylonian, but the people who are Jewish sort of had this in some of their texts as well. But it's this idea that the demons reside around these dirty areas like toilets or and so the thing is, though, if you were in this dirty bathroom, this Mesopotamian toilet demon could attack you. And so there's Sumerian texts that sort of focus on epilepsy and stroke being how it attacks you. It mentions that if you fall on the left side during this sort of attack of this demon on the toilet, then it could be an indicator of specifically the toilet demon being what it was that attacked you, and not simply a stroke or what have you. So it's also been known as the lurker. And so it tries to, it's part of a group of demons that are known as lurker types, which wait for people to be in dark areas and abandoned places, and they come out and get you then. But the concept of the lurker and the demon that lurks in the toilet demon, it is probably the worst because it waits till you're alone and at your most vulnerable on the toilet. And so, especially if you're on the toilet in the dark, and then you could have a double duty, which no pun intended, but
so now, Dennis is right. So now I'm not hungry anymore, and I'm afraid to go to the bathroom.
Not at night.
No, but
go at night.
I think you're right, though. When I've studied this stuff in voodoo and hoodoo and a little bit of even ceremonial magic and stuff, they talk about those types of things. Even if you just look at it from an energetic level, if there were negative energetic beings, do you think they would want to be around clean things, or would they like to coop up around somebody that's a hoarder? Of course, they're going to be, be around dirt and stuff. So, if you look into the voodoo religions and hoodoo, they do floor washes. They mix all these herbs and stuff and wash their floors with it and make sure they get every little corner. And it all kind of relates, I think.
Yeah, no, that's pretty fascinating, especially looking back then on the crime scene or the home that this man who changed his name to Pazuzu had. That was something that really stood out about his home, is aside from the disturbing occult symbols and different Sumerian gods all over his walls and ceilings, he had just ankle deep garbage that led to the bedrooms that were piled high with just grime and clutter and absolute filth. I mean, his home, there may still, if somebody looks for it on YouTube, there may still be video of it that was taken by the sheriff's department when they were walking through and taking, images of just the entire home. And it is filthy. It's beyond filthy. So it is fascinating to consider that, maybe there's something to it, whether the demons are drawn to that sort of filthy environment or they cultivate it after they've set in. I know there's a lot to be said for that, but between toilet demons and these things, it's just, definitely you want to keep your house as clean as you can, at least your immediate surroundings. They also advise that you can build your spiritual protection by surrounding yourself with positive reminders of faith, family, and friends. So even if you're not of a particular religious belief, it's more about the positive feelings. So, if you're a Christian and you want to have crosses, that's great. But if you're not, and you feel like maybe pictures of your family, your children, your pets, your nice times you've had or good things, whatever it is, beautiful flowers, anything that just uplifts your environment. And then also remove any objects that cause too much negativity or bad feelings. Just basically listen to your gut on that. And so try to make a spiritual atmosphere with whatever sort of connects you to that spirituality. It could be candles, crystals, or just anything, nature, like I said. But
and you go into this in the book as well? Yes.
Oh, yes. I go definitely into all the details and also what to do if you think you're possessed. Because that's something that, I was actually contacted by people who knew I was writing this book, telling me their accounts, one of which I share in the book, which is pretty lengthy, but it's an account of a woman who was herself possessed. And it was a very compelling account that I thought was important to include because it showed just the firsthand experience of what it was like to be a person dealing with the demons in you, especially coming from a place where she wasn't religious at all. She was a educated woman living out in California. She had no reason to believe in anything like this, and she found her life being turned upside down. And then eventually she had an exorcism. And so, I was contacted by a lot of different people, and then a few of them believing that they were actually possessed. And so I put advice in the book on what to do if you think you are possessed. Which the very first thing you should do is to contact a mental health professional. And that's not to imply that it's just because you're crazy or anything. It's just the truth is that trusted mental health professionals actually can put you in touch with credible exorcists because, mental health professionals are now kind of recognizing the importance of rituals and significance of rituals like exorcism. In fact, there are some mental health professionals that are themselves exorcists. So it works out really well. But either way, it's good to get that sort of mental health check because if you end up going to an exorcist on your own, they likely want to have that step sort of covered before they agree to speak with you or move forward with an exorcism. At least the reputable ones will. They'll want to make sure that you've had that check and then they go ahead and move forward. So it doesn't hurt either way. But either way, it's important to reach out to somebody who's professional for, spiritual guidance in that way to get the ball rolling if you do think that you're possessed.
What about things like artifacts and stuff? I've always been taught, even if somebody gives you a gift, like somebody gives you a rock, let's just say as an example, like here's a gift, like before you bring it into your home, they talk about, there's a lot of texts that talk about cleansing and consecrating it to make sure that it doesn't bring bad energy into your home. Like just because they relate everything to energy, like everything has energy.
Yeah.
And that's where I kind of can see how some of these artifacts could really have, think about it energetically. Some of the rituals that these people would do to an artifact, like they would wait till there were certain planetary alignments, certain times of the day, sacrifice certain things, bloodletting. So they're putting all this crazy energy into one artifact. So like if you just put that in somebody's home, or, you were telling the what they call witch bottles or whatever. If you put that stuff there, it energetically, it does something different. It just does.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
no,
definitely. That. Oh, absolutely. I think in the exorcists I spoke with, actually, they agree that one of them saying it only takes just a little opening in the door to let in an entity. And so, it's definitely advised that you say a blessing over things that you have come in your home. And I know Bill said that he didn't care if it's brand new or not. He would just, he knew that demonic forces can attach themselves to people, places, and things. And so before he brought anything in to his home, he would bless it or consecrate it or do something like that. And so that was something that stuck out to me because I collect antiques, and I have that made me actually when he said that I have an old clock, a wind-up clock that it's about 150 years old, and it just tick tick tick, and it chimes, and when it goes off at midnight, it sounds like the ghost of Marley from the Scrooge or whatever is going to just like come in. And so during the writing of this book, I actually stopped winding it because it was kind of freaking me out at that point. So, but yeah, it has me definitely thinking about, and especially after that book incident with me bringing in a bunch of weird antiques to my house, I started thinking maybe I should, at least say a little something. I don't know.
So well, I would from here on out, no matter what, especially after everything you've been through. And speaking of which, so after the collapse, the electrical fires, the thing that happened with your cat, the jogging incident, witnessing the possession, all of these things, has your life calmed down? Has everything seemed to be okay now? Or are you still, I'm just curious, are you still going through these types of things or paranormal events?
No, not directly like that. Things have, it's hard to say with these things. It's easy to just make those connections and say, oh yeah, well, ever since then, this has been, but I can say that no, the things have gotten better. My medical issue, is cleared up. And that is a peculiar thing, though, too, because as I said, I had medication for this. So whenever I get one of these attacks, I would have to take a medicine that would slow down my heart. But I've not really had to take that medicine. And so it's been really strange that,
they still don't know what sped up your heart, though, do they?
No. And I went to do a follow-up at the cardiologist, and I said, this has changed. I haven't been having any of these episodes. What could it have been? And he said, oh, I don't know. These things can just come and go. We still don't know why. He said, just look at it as a lucky break then. And he just sent me on my way. And he said I didn't have to come back to him. It was just over, just over and done, case closed. And so, yeah. And I've been obviously jogging and doing things since then. And at first I was afraid to get back into it. And, I found myself just doing fine, and everything seems much better. And so, although nothing can bring back my cat, but I did find myself drawn to another rescue kitty who was on death row. And he was actually on death row about 4 times in his life before somebody kept rescuing him to put him in another shelter, and he found his way to me. And so, I think things are looking up. No complaints yet. I think I'm just grateful that the book is over.
Well, yeah, the cats can see the stuff. You probably got a few cats, right? They see stuff, don't they? Like, to me, they see stuff. Mine does all the time.
Let me just say, that's a little spooky. No, that's funny you say that, because I did just get some chills, which is quite silly. But my new cat, Mario, he's been weird. I mean, he may just be a weird guy, but he does this thing where he looks up and will just meow, like he's meowing at something. And I don't know what the spot is on the wall that he's meowing at, but it's always in my office. And it's just like,
is it towards the corner?
Now that I'm thinking about it, that's freaking me out. So
is it towards the corner?
It's too late at night. Yes, it's too late at night.
Yeah, you got something there. If it's towards the corner, well, I'm just telling you, if it's towards the corner, it's like a vortex. My cat Leo does that too, until I got rid of it. But he would look at the corner and just kind of, his back would arch up, and he'd look at, like he was about to fight, and look at it. And for some reason, this stuff goes into corners,
Oh, ooh, that is That's okay. That's really spooky because yes, he does look at the corner, but he looks up there and it's almost like he has these cute little conversations. He goes, meow, 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 and his eyes get really big and wide. And then all of a sudden after meowing and looking up there, he'll get spooked and run off and then just shoot down the hall. And then he'll come back to it. And then he'll do this. And it's always at the same time of night. It's always at night at a specific time. He'll do this. I should get some video of it because it's really weird. I just thought he was a quirky, weird cat and that he might be just seeing things. But
well, that's what they'll say. Your cat's schizophrenic and it's seeing things. But I don't think that's the case.
I don't know. I guess, can cats get schizophrenia? I imagine maybe they could, right? I guess they could get everything wrong with them too. I don't know. That's really wild. I never even considered that. That's spooky. Now I'm going to be sitting here afraid.
Well, whatever it is, it'll stay. Yeah, it'll stay in that corner. So here's the thing.
Gosh.
Here's the thing. This is why when you hear all these people talking about saging, right? And they think that they light some sage and they say some prayers and they go around the room or whatever, and
that's got what this medium did. Yes, that's what she did after.
But the thing, if you really want to do it right, you should leave an exit for like open the door, leave one exit, right? And you've got to put this sage in open the drawers, every corner, the closets, everything. Now, if you do like a general cleansing, sometimes they'll go into the corners because you've missed it. Or there's just something there, It's a safe spot for them.
That's quite something because after this happened, I had that friend who claims she knows how to do these things. She came in and did this whole sage thing that I had not had done before, and no, she didn't open windows, she didn't do it. She just kind of put sage everywhere. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so spooky. I'm not going to be able to look in here.
I ain't trying to freak you out, but that's probably what happened. Pushed it right in the corner.
I had not heard that before, but wow. Now my poor cat's having to be. Oh gosh, that's freaky. I'm gonna take video of this when it happens again. And
I want to see that.
Yeah, because it's really weird.
We only got a few more minutes with Dr. Heather Lynn, so if you want to get your questions in, you can do that in the chat rooms. You can call in 1-800-588-0335. Most of you like to text. You can text in. We just got a few more minutes left with her. We'll be right back.
Is out there.
There's something out here.
And so are we. KTOK Digital Broadcasting, The Fringe FM. You're listening to Lighting the Void Radio. Who were the real ancient Egyptians? What is it about ancient Egypt that captivates us all? The critically acclaimed series Magical Egypt is back with all new episodes. Let Chance Gardner and company take you on another adventure through Magical Egypt in the new series Magical Egypt 2. Magical Egypt 2 attempts a forensic reconstruction of the science of the ancients through a study of ancient aesthetics. Also, the best researchers and authors in the field like John Anthony West, Graham Hancock, Laird Scranton, Robert Bouval, Lon Malduquette, Aaron Cheek, and more join together to explore the topics of the esoteric and the hidden messages of the ancient Egyptians. Just go to magicalegypt.com right now and put in the code word FRINGE and get 10% off any download or order, including the groundbreaking original Magical Egypt series, as well as the new episodes in Magical Egypt 2. Also, check out the great work and the companion series at magicalegypt.com. Click the banner on the Fringe FM or go to magicalegypt.com and use the code word FRINGE and get 10% off your order today while it lasts.
Alright everyone, this is Justin from the UK. Excuse the chitty. If you're into the Fringe and you want to hear the brass tacks, my old china plate, Joe Roop and his guests on Lighting the Void will open your mince pies. You need to shut your north and south and use your 10-speed gears and listen to them bubble. You could hear a Barry Crocker, no Brussels, but he ain't no holy friar. Anyway, you be the Barnaby Rudge and take a butcher's.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Hello, this is Vance Nesbitt. Take the time to expand your mind by listening to Lighting the Void with Joe Roop right here on The Fringe FM.
Follow The Fringe FM on Facebook and Twitter at The Fringe FM. Lighting the Void is proud to announce Mind and Magic's Protection and Defense Course for protection from magical and psychic attacks. This is not a joke. Magic practitioners are on the rise, and with that comes attacks from baneful or black magicians that try to harm or hurt others for their own selfish reasons. If you are not a believer in psychic attacks, then this isn't for you. If you are, and you want the power to defend yourself and your family and home, then I highly suggest you grab Freighter Xavier's Protection and Defense Course. In this course, you will learn how to tell if you are under attack from a natural source or if an individual is attacking you. The 4 forms of curses and attacks. How to remove self-imposed curses. The correct way to cleanse your home from negativity or malevolent entities. How to make your own holy water. What you should always keep near or under your bed. Herbs that banish negativity and promote purity. The most powerful banishing rituals on the planet. And for those that seem to want to harm you the most, how to put your enemies in a hell pit of their own making. You can also learn protection against shadow people and other entities. Or are you just in a bad planetary alignment? Even how to get rid of an enemy using a tic-tac box. It does not matter what your faith or belief is, this will work. Click the banner on the website at lightingthevoid.com or go to lightingthevoid.com/Xavier. Want to know what's on The Fringe FM? Check out our schedule at thefringe.fm.
All right, welcome back to Lighting the Void. That is our guitar man, the one and only Bundy. I believe you can go to Reverb Nation or what is that other website? I'm not sure. It's hard to find, but that's one of Markham's best friends. A lot of you guys ask, who's the guitar guy? His name is Bundy, the mysterious Bundy. But we're here with Dr. Heather Lynn. If you want to go check out the website, please do so. It's drheatherlynn.com. And I know you've got a Facebook page and Instagram too, right? I want to make sure that I get those links out for everybody to go check out. I mean, this has been a cool conversation. A lot of people are like, oh man, you're going to talk about evil stuff tonight. But, it's funny, like you and I have actually had some synchronicities about certain things, like your cat in the corner and stuff. Like, I believe this stuff is real on energetically, but the demon thing, I'm not so sure because, like I mentioned earlier in the show, the history and names of the demons and everything, it gets all crossed up. I think sometimes if we want to look at it from a practical nature, it might just be better to look at things like bad and negative energy. But if we want to know the truth about it, you got to do a lot of digging when it comes to the names of demons and stuff, don't you?
Yeah, no, absolutely, especially because they just get changed over time and sort of absorbed and reabsorbed into different cultures. And, so it's really hard to differentiate. And I think it's something that isn't necessarily the most important thing to get wrapped up in, because as you said, at the end of the day, I think the real focus is the energy. Because a lot of these demons, they're really just little statues that then, get depicted as something, and the stories just, I really kind of point that out in the book that some of these images that we have about demons, for instance, the devil with the horns and the cloven hooves, I mean, those things are basically retellings of the god Pan from Greek myth. This was during a time where the church was sort of trying to literally demonize pagan deities to make it so that you weren't interested in having those in your life anymore. So, it's you just have a lot of this where these images, you get caught up in like little gargoyle figures or all of these, and I don't believe they're accurate depictions of what something evil would be. As you said, it's more of an energy, a good energy, a bad energy, to that effect. And so getting wrapped up into the looks of them or the very specific types of them, it's just, I think, a form of idolatry that doesn't really lead to any sort of benefit in us truly understanding what these forces are. And because they can take any form. If it's truly an evil entity, if it's truly an evil energy, then it really doesn't matter what the form is. It can take any form. Even as a trickster spirit, it could take a pleasant form. And the history is loaded with legends and stories of good-looking, creatures or beautiful maidens or any of these things that are actually demonic. So looks can be deceiving. It's about the energy.
What about locations? I mean, we've talked about artifacts and, curses and exorcisms. What about just locations? Are certain places have, bad juju or curses or evil intent to them?
I think so. I think there are definitely places like that. I mean, some can just be, people talk about haunted houses and these sorts of things, and there may be some truth in that. I address some of those in my book as well. But one of them that really stood out to me was the mysterious forest that's in Transylvania. It's this just weird forest that's just has really strange, twisty, bendy trees. It's actually really beautiful. But what's weird is that in the middle of this forest is a near perfect oval where nothing grows. It's just it can be seen from the air, and scientists have actually studied why it is that there's just nothing growing here. They've done soil tests and different things, and they cannot determine, what it is that's making it so that nothing grows here. And why is it that these trees are sort of twisting and bending in ways that would seem to defy nature? They refer to it as the clearing. And it's considered to be in one of the most terrifying forests in the world. And as a result, it attracts a lot of Romanian witches and mediums and people who believe that the area is magical and could be a gate to another dimension. But that's, only by the light of day. Otherwise, people don't venture into it at night because it's been believed that people will go missing if they do. It's sort of like a Bermuda Triangle of Transylvania. There was a report of a 5-year-old girl who disappeared into the forest and later emerged from the forest 5 years in the same clothes and having not aged a day. I mean, some of these, clearly could be these old wives' tales, but either way, this area has been linked to all sorts of, whether it be old legends of hauntings or even modern day things like UFO hovering, over the clearing, and it was reported in 1968. So much so that the communist government, they didn't want anything to do with sort of esoteric or paranormal beliefs, and so they got really mad when one of their own actually cited this UFO. It was somebody from the military itself, so a very credible person. As a result, the government seized the photos and information on the sighting. And so that's led to a lot of UFO investigators sort of going out there and, trying to figure out what's going on. There's also been things like shadow figures and things like shapeshifters reported, and images have been captured on camera, and, just the things you'd expect to find in that area, like orbs and strange things. But also instruments have measured anomalous fluctuations in the electromagnetic field. And, and infrasound recording devices have picked up weird echoes as well. And so, I mean, everything from people seeing ghostly men through the trees that are dressed in traditional Romanian garb, look like they're from centuries ago, and others just say that they walk by certain twisted trees and discover that hours passed where it seemed like minutes, so they lose time. And I mean, it's a very strange sight. But this one, it was really interesting because it has this connection to, demonic activity, but also extraterrestrial activity and these shape-shifting paranormal type activities. But it was also researched by science and even, military personnel, and still no answers. It's simply called the clearing.
Wow, that's kind of freaky, but it's kind of cool at the same time to know that something like that exists. I wonder if that's kind of related to the same thing as, you brought up twisted trees. I know I've had a few people on here talk about energy vortexes and the missing time thing that, it's just weird. Like that we don't have any answers about it. We just know that there's some type of energy there, that's not right. Even at the crystal mine down here, who we had on last night, there's spots on that crystal mine that I've been to that send, your compass in all different directions. And I've seen orbs out there as well. So yeah, there's definitely some weird stuff going on.
And visitors also, it's weird because visitors have reported that, even though it's the woods and you would expect to hear birds or insects, that there's nothing.
No sound.
It's absolute dead silence. Mm-hmm.
Yep. See, I've experienced that, but I don't know what that is, but it is starting to freak me out a little bit, because if we look at everything as energy, then it's not so scary, right? But if we start looking at things as like, okay, evil forces, because there's that whole semantic argument that I've been in on this show several times. Well, there's no such thing as good and evil and yada, yada, yada. Well, if there is no such thing as good and evil, I've felt it. It sounds to me like you've been around it a few times. You felt it as well. Or am I wrong about that?
I felt it. I felt negativity. And that's, what would be considered a philosophical debate then at that point about like what is good, what is evil, moral relativism and the epistemology of that. And so, you could get real deep into discussing that. But at the end of the day, what does your gut tell you? That's sort of, these are valid arguments and valid discussions to be had. But at the same time, it's really hard to then go and tell, say, the mother of a murdered child that this was not evil, that this was okay. It was just, whatever. Or it's really hard to, tell somebody who's felt and experienced these negative forces firsthand, or who have maybe even been possessed themselves and come out of it. It's going to be really hard to tell them, oh no, that's. So yeah, it definitely has to do with the concept of what is real. And, I think demons are very real to some people. And I think that as a result, they can have the lasting and real consequences in our real world, but hopefully readers can decide if demons are real and once they read the evidence that I have in this book. But at the end of the day, evidence and science matters, but still people are going to have their gut. And that's something that, it's going to keep this going for as long as it can. And I don't know that there's anything wrong with that. I think we need to have that gut check moment. I think to always just use our heads, maybe it just blinds us to some of those unseen forces that we don't yet understand or have the tools to understand.
Right. And is there any implications of, like, in your studies, which I've been kind of researching myself here lately about, I've read Gordon White's book, Starships, and ancient, when it goes back to ancient Sumeria and the star beings and how everything relates to certain constellations and stuff. I've even had people on the show who claim to have spoke to aliens, like they've had close encounters of the fifth kind, and then I'll have other people, and I'm getting somewhere with this, but I'll have other people message me and go, "Don't be fooled, Joe. Those are demons and aliens. They just are pretending to be nice beings." And it's like, okay, well, if there's an alien, I want to talk to it, but if it's evil, then I don't want to. I don't want to even worry about that if it's ridiculous. But in archaeology, is there a relation between, I guess you could say, have you found any whatsoever relation between like star beings or alien beings connected to demons or demonology?
Oh, yes. I actually wasn't sure about this when I first started researching, and, I found that to be the case in even this new book that I'm working on, where you have the question of the 7 sages of Mesopotamian beliefs, their religion, or their it's more like a legend. They didn't really have this religion associated with it in the same way we would understand now. But they have this pantheon of gods. They also had a trinity, but they had so many different gods and these different things. But the texts really do point to these gods being not so much etheric beings, but real beings. But then they sort of act as kings and ruling elite. And so you have that sort of real sense to it. But then they introduce this idea of the seven sages, and some works will talk about the seven sages as being also humans. But I have found different texts that clarify, they're much older texts that clarify that no, these seven sages were not actually physical humans that, some have said were from like a pre-flood era, but that these seven sages that came after the flood and gave the advice to the builders, what they call the builders on the ground, these were not human. These were non-human entities that were channeled and that would bring sort of this knowledge to the ruling elites, as long as they knew how to sort of get in contact with them. So it really is sort of like a, wow, channeling or and they have seven specific names, and then you see then through this whole sort of venture is this relationship between advisor sage that came from the stars, that came from somewhere, not necessarily with like rocket ships and what have you, but that somehow came from like portals, like constellations, stargates, spiritual things, and they would come through this meditation techniques that the ruling class would have. And then so you see that in the Sumerian culture, and then you see this sort of repeated over and over again with the story of Solomon getting demons or entities or some of these to help build the temple. You start seeing these things over and over again in different cultures that are very similar, in that you have these human beings who seek to get this sort of eternal wisdom or something they can tap into to give them power or something, and they channel these beings, and they're often described in very similar ways, and after a while they become considered demons, and that's when you have the question of the Enochian magic and the languages that Enoch was supposedly in touch with, and then John Dee and Edward Kelly, right, the great Renaissance magicians, sort of tapped into that as well. And so they also initially tapped into these seven sages that they clearly name, who then gave them high technology and high sciences that would go on to completely redefine the world as we know it. And, science, technology, advancements in navigation, cartography, all of these things. And then, things
That's
didn't go so well
for
them. But yeah, I think there's a connection, and I think it stems from Mesopotamia.
Well, I do too, because in some of Manly P. Hall's writings, he talks about that, where like the mystery schools and the ancient priestcraft in Egypt and Sumeria, at one time they were able to, and he just doesn't really get into specifics, but he talks about like, at one time they were able to contact these beings, but the priest class got kind of infiltrated, and they started letting people in the doors that weren't ready or whatever, and eventually and slowly we lost the ability to contact these beings.
Yeah.
It sounds all connected to me. It really does.
It does, and I think that there is some truth to that. And I kind of go into that a little bit in Evil Archaeology. I set the stage for that and the foundations for that, and I do discuss Freemasonry and some of those connections, and also some of the stories about Freemasonic demon worship, which is some very interesting story there. And I discuss, Manly P. Hall and some of that, but some people think the Masons are, worshiping demons specifically, and so I go into some old stories about that are very specific, and
all of this is in the book.
Gruesome.
Like all of this,
every bit. It's chock full of everything you could imagine. Everything from, gory artifacts and haunted things and urban legends and Freemasons and everything. I spare nothing. It's all there.
Can you get the? Did you say the Kindle version's ready now, or is it not ready now?
Yes. The Kindle version's available now on Amazon, and the paperback and audio book and all the others will be available everywhere books are sold on the 1st. On your birthday.
I can't wait till this thing comes out, man. Yeah, on my birthday. I was born on April Fool's, believe it or not. Not a bad time to be born, but
It makes you an Aries, right?
Yep, that's it. Yep. I can start stuff. I can start a lot of things, and I get mad easily sometimes. And I'm prone to accidents, apparently. I don't know if I've got astrologers that come on the show, a few that I trust. So, but that stuff gets kind of sketchy if you ain't careful with it too, but, yeah, so this has been a very, very fascinating conversation. Even got a couple of texts in from some people like, Kurt, and some, saying that this was a really good conversation. Another guy texted in a while ago, talked about his wife, is Scandinavian, and that she always tells tales about how the Vikings did those types of head surgeries that you were talking about earlier. So yeah, there's some cool stuff to it. And I'm glad you're doing this and going, even though you've been through some crazy stuff. I almost have to say thank you, because as a truth seeker, we want to know these things. And there's a lot of hype out there, and we kind of just want to know what's really going on. And I know that it takes certain people, regardless if you're being called a debunker or you're a renegade, we still need people like that. So thank you. And I can't wait to read the book.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. It was a labor of love, not love for demons, but love for the truth. So,
and tell me, can you please, by all means, give all of your links out, like your social media links and stuff too? We'll put that in the show notes as well, but go ahead and
sure.
Plug away, please.
Oh, well, it's drheatherlynn.com. That's where you can pretty much find everything. And then also right now, Shadows of Your Mind magazine did a nice piece on me. And their magazine is really, really nice. They do all kinds of stuff in regards to like paranormal and all of this. But their magazine is absolutely free. And so if you want to go check out their magazine, that's shadowsmagazine.co.uk. Really great magazine. Like I said, it's free. And that's pretty much it. It's just, go to my website if you want to learn more. Email me if you have any stories or things you'd like to share. I love getting emails and, get involved in any way you can. I actually have a nonprofit organization that I've started called STAR. It's the Society for Truth and Archaeological Research. And so that's something that I'm working on and getting off the ground too. It's an organization that intends on getting together both professional and independent renegade researchers together to sort of start looking at the truth behind all of these fringe theories and different things in a way that's open-minded and inclusive and supportive. So check it out.
Well, Dr. Heather Lynn, thank you so much for coming on Lighting the Void. You'll have to have you back sometime, because I know that you're going to keep digging in. And I can't wait to read this book. And thank you again so much for coming on the show.
Oh, no, thank you so much. And thank you for everybody who's listening. I really appreciate it.
All right, guys, Dr. Heather Lynn. Go to drheatherlynn.com. Go grab the book and tell me about it. Tell me what you think as well. But we do got to get out of here. If you're listening live, stay tuned for the Secret Teachings with Ryan Gable. And if you want to support the show, you can always donate, grab a T-shirt, use the Amazon portal. And we are working on that membership site, too, for commercial free and extra content for you as we speak. And sign up to the newsletter, too. That's actually about to come out. And don't forget, the show was produced by the Fringe FM and cannot be syndicated without written permission. And music was by Chronox, Bundy, Kevin MacLeod, Space Station, and some music from the public domain. We'll see you guys tomorrow night. Good night. Discretion is advised. We told you weeknights on the Fringe FM are now even better, and we mean it.
Do it live!
Where else can you hear the best shows and the best talent? Kick off your evening with our newest host, Alex Exum, live at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 Eastern. Hang out with me, Joe Roop, on Lighting the Void at 9 Pacific, midnight Eastern. Ryan Gable expands your mind on the secret teachings at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern. We're bringing the heat every single night. Fire it up, The Fringe FM.
Yahoy there! This is Gigi from Shift Happens. And holy shit, you're listening to KTLK, The Fringe FM. Hey, don't you dare turn that
Drink, another drink. Plenty in the cellar when it's gone. Drink, the glasses clink. Making tinkling music till the dawn is breaking. Clang, clang, who cares a dang? What's the difference when you're on a spree? Over the teeth behind the gums, look out stomach, here she comes. I have another drink on me. Gurgle, 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 gurgle. Gurgle, 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 gurgle. Tickle, 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 slice of cheese and bite of pickle. Doesn't even cost a nickel now to wash it down.